Alright, and we are live. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Last time I was talking to Alex Rubenstahl and Jade West about Neffy's claims during the interview with G-Man. It was a really very good hangout. I really enjoyed it. So I think I have time free right now, so maybe we'll do another one. And we have Jackson Reed with us today, the first participant. Maybe Jade West will join, and maybe even PZ Myers. We're really excited to hear. Well, Jackson, what do you like to talk about right now? Oh, shit.
That happens to me too sometimes, yeah.
Fuck. This is a really beginner's mistake.
It's all right. It happens to everybody. Uh, what to talk about? Well, there's nice weather here right now.
Yeah. Well, I have prepared something. I made a post on G Plus and on the Great Debate community to ask others questions they like to be answered, like they have heard from other creationists, or maybe just have questions for about they have just themselves. So let's see here. I don't think anybody has answered my request, so that's too bad. But I put in some of my own. Let me see what are they. Oh yes, you know G-Man, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
Yes. Well, he made a video some months ago. It's called "Don't Assume Evolutionists Are Telling You the Truth." And it's a short video, but he made several points that I turned into questions, basically. So yes, and one of those questions are: how does mutations produce new genetic information? It's a very common question that creationists have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Often when I hear them ask that question, my first reaction is to ask them what they think information is, because 10 times out of 10 they don't know. Even
Yeah.
the geneticist creationists like Georgia Purdom will use this incredibly nebulous term and have absolutely zero plans to define it.
Yeah.
Because as we were talking about just a moment ago, there are all these different parts of DNA, which even creationists will admit do nothing. I mean, ERVs aren't doing anything. Pseudogenes, retrotransposons, these guys aren't doing anything. So, do they class as information? Is it just the protein coding genes? But and so you get them to think about that. But there are also instances, very interesting instances, where novel structures and abilities have arisen in populations of organisms. For instance, in garter snakes, in multiple lineages of garter snakes, they acquired these de novo mutations that allowed them to hunt their prey, which is this venomous salamander. I think it is called Tarica or Tarica, Taricha.
Do you
And
mean
so,
poisonous or venomous, or maybe?
I mean, it. I isn't venomous is correct, isn't it?
Do you mean like a garter snake that eats something that when you eat it, it kills you basically?
Yeah. Yes.
That's poisonous. Poison is when you ingest it, and venom is when something bites you and injects venom.
Ah,
So
I always miss that one.
that's a technicality. Sorry
No,
for
no. That's right. No,
interrupting
I always miss that one. I
you.
always get those confused. I'm glad to be corrected on that. Um, yeah. So they're poisonous, and multiple lineages of garter snakes have developed the same, have developed mutations to digest these without dying. There's also in the water strider, uh, Ragavalia, or the water strider genus Ragavalia, Rhagovelia. They've developed this new structure, which is like a little fan, because these guys are on water, but they can't really move upstream. Well, this one uh, group of water striders called Ragavalia have developed their own little fan, which allows them to move upstream. And so, I mean, they're just little cases like that, but I think creationists always have an out for that kind of stuff, though, because they'll just say, oh, it's still
It's
just a
not,
water strider.
it's not new information.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same stuff I get too. And usually, or maybe a few years ago, when I experienced it for the first time, I just went, "Oh, here's an example." And when I give the example, they will say, "Oh, that's not new information because X, Y, and Z." And then I gave another example that don't where these new criteria came up to apply, they will make new criteria to discard the new example. And it goes on and on and on, basically. So now I am thinking, okay, first give me a clear definition that will not change when I give an example, okay? Now give the definition, and they will never do it within that scenario ever.
Mm-hmm.
No.
No, yeah. Yeah, I totally believe that.
Yeah.
It just, they're not allowed, basically, to give you criteria that could potentially prove them wrong. I think Aaron Ra
Yes.
says that in, I think it's the foundational falsehoods of creationism or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if they give us a clear definition of what they expect, then we have the potential to bring it to them, and then,
There you go. There you go.
yeah, yeah. The like, what is it? The dog cat divide within carnivora. It's like, show us a transitional form. It's like, okay, well, we've got the Miacids, we've got Dormaliscion, which are these carnivorans that have cat and dog like characteristics, and then, well, which do we classify these as, dogs or cats? Well, it turns out they're neither.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah,
there's another thing that creation should get, because they think when we say transitional fossils, they go, all right, a half a snake and a half a bird. Okay, show me a half snake and half bird. Basically.
exactly.
They never think about, okay, maybe if they share a common ancestor, the common ancestor doesn't necessarily had a mixture of both descendants. That's not how it works. But we can go in it later. I want to add something about the new information.
Yeah.
But I have another response to it. Basically, mutations can be reversed. Like an A can turn into a G, and a G can turn back into an A, right? So.
Okay. Yeah. With with a little point mutation.
Yes. If mutations can go both ways, then if mutations can subtract information, then by definition or by necessity, mutations can also add information.
Okay.
Because mutations can go both ways. So, of course, now we have to determine, okay, which mutation has subtracted and which mutation has added information. But that is also another, of course, it's the same problem. How do you define new information? And creationists will never do that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's R.J. Downard makes a similar argument. He says, or in his book Evolution Slam Dunk, he says there are these parts in our genome called ALUs, and ALUs have different functions. Some of them are beneficial, some of them are harmful. Like there was one ALU, I think, that has been implicated in the origin of trichromacy, but there's another ALU that can cause cancer.
It was an ALU.
Yeah, ALU. Let's see. I'll put it in the ALU. Yeah, they're called ALUs. I think they're pseudogenes, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they're very interesting. And so he asks creationists, says, okay, so some ALUs are harmful and some are beneficial. So how many of these were created? Which ALUs were created and which were not created? And to date, there is not an answer.
Yeah, It's another thing like have you heard of the gene that functions with the embryo implanting itself into the uterus in placental mammals?
Okay.
Basically, the genes involved they originate from retroviruses.
Ooh.
So basically, in the ancestors of placental mammals, a virus inserted itself into the germline of an ancestor, and this gene or part of the genes of the virus got used for the embryo to basically avoid being rejected by the uterus, allowing itself to implant into the uterus.
Wow, that's really
So
cool.
this basically provokes a very interesting question. Why does God need a virus for his creation?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. I did not know that. That's really cool.
Of course, I'm not saying that all Christians are creationists.
Right, of course.
Yes. So perhaps they will perhaps like Christians like J. T. West and Fiona could say, oh well, God used evolution, and the virus was a pretty ingenious way for God to make the placentals. And in principle, I have not a problem with that because that doesn't go against the evidence,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very neat. Yeah, I was doing some research a while back. I was reading about oh crap, what is it called? It's I guess just how the mother's body doesn't reject the embryo. I thought it was very interesting. Now I can't remember what it's called when what that whole process is called, or
When what?
it's like the mother's body doesn't reject it um because it recognizes it's not part of her tissue. Oh well, that was stuff
Oh.
from a while back, but it's all very neat stuff.
Yeah.
Genetics in general is just really cool, I think.
Yeah. Someone says in the live chat the same time as Red's Rhetoric. Yes, I noticed that. It was it was really frustrating to hear. Like 2 days ago, I planned to have a hangout today, but now suddenly Red has a hangout too. But maybe he doesn't know. It's just a coincidence. Have you heard of Red's Rhetoric?
Um, yes, I've heard of him. I haven't seen any of his videos.
Hmm. He's now busy arguing with flat earthers.
Oh wow, yeah, that is an area I have not
No.
delved.
I have sometimes, but it's really frustrating. Like it's like creationist, 10 times worse or more. Yes, because whenever you press him on a point, it's easily you don't need to go to a lab. You don't even need to go to read the scientific literature. Just a picture that you can take for yourself, like this here. No, it's fake. That's how it goes, basically. It's yeah.
Yeah, I've
Better, yeah, I think Arnold is making the mistake of also going into the flat Earth stuff along with the creationist. I think he has his hands full of creationist already. So
oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I've seen a few things about it, like Cool Hard Logic. I love his videos
oh yeah,
about the flat earthers, the floating space pizza.
A space biscuit. That's my favorite line.
Yeah, yeah, I really enjoy the mathematical analysis of those arguments. I think that is really fascinating
Yeah,
because that's something I wouldn't even think about, the trying to map like a graph onto a polar onto a polar graph, or a coordinate graph onto a polar graph. I wouldn't even think about that. I think that's very ingenious. And so trying to calculate, oh, a plane only has such and such amounts of fuel, and so they can go this route, but if the earth were flat, they wouldn't be able to go this route without passing over like all these other countries, you know.
yeah,
I just absolutely fascinating. And so, but yeah, no, I haven't engaged that with that yet. Maybe one day,
Mhm.
but not yet.
I think if you do that at the time and you're not really interested, that you just shouldn't. Reds Rhetoric and others are handling it pretty well. I think. So okay, let's go back to perhaps okay. Let's go back to the new information. Let's say we define new information as a new gene. It has a new function that didn't exist before. Of course, creationists would not maybe not agree with it, but it's a fair definition because we have lots of genes in our genome, and when you compare it to another person or another individual that has an extra gene, with a gene that can do something the other people or other individuals that don't have this gene cannot do, would that count as new information? By a fair definition, it would, I think.
Yeah, and I mean we do certainly have examples of that, like the apolipoprotein A1 or the what's it, ApoA1 Milan gene, which is in this. I think you probably heard of it because Arnaud talks has talked about it before. There's a family in Italy that can digest higher amounts of cholesterol because they have this mutation, and
Yeah.
so it's like so they're more resistant to heart disease and stuff like that. Same with there's an American family in the Midwest that has an LRP5 mutation, so they have high bone density, stuff like that. We do have examples of this kind of stuff that's out
Yeah.
there. There's I think there are like a few tetrachromatic women or something like that. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, I think to that they would say, uh, oh, what is it called? They'd say like, oh, the genes were always there or whatever, or the
Yeah.
mutation was already there. It was just switched on or off. Like we
Yeah.
already have all the possible potential mutations in our genome. It's just a matter of turning them on or off, which is
Yes.
ludicrous.
And there's another really weird thing. Like some creationists believe that all the cats, like the lions, tigers, and cheetahs, and house cats, and basically all the species that we have today, came from a common ancestor. Not just very recently, like 4,000 years, and evolved very rapidly into different species. But they also did not add new genetic information, so the common ancestor would have all the genes from all these species in one genome, basically, which is yeah, the simple way of saying it is just impossible. It's impossible for
Yeah.
two individuals to have the total amount of genes from several different species, and each made up of many individuals. Yeah, this is just another way why it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Did you hear Eric Hovind put out a movie called Genesis Paradise Lost?
Yes, and
Uh,
I haven't seen it because I live in the Netherlands, and I don't think it will come out in theaters here.
well, yeah, it was in theaters back in mid-November. Um,
Does it actually come in theaters, or maybe?
yeah, it came in theater. It was limited release
Oh
in
yes,
theaters
yes.
because they didn't go through like Sony or something. They went through this group called Fathom, which is like special events, and so they could only show it like originally they only planned it for one day. And I know Paula G has done uh a huge description of it, uh, all these different videos. But yeah, so they could only limited release for only one day, and so
Oh,
well then they got enough money from ticket sales. They decided, okay, well we'll release it later the same week also. So they made 2 days. But but the interesting thing, or one of the interesting things, was aside from the melon eating T Rex, that they show a cat at one point, which is like it looks like a lion. It's got the mane and all, but it also has tiger stripes on like its rear half. So yeah, so
no.
they were going for that. They were going for that.
Oh,
The earliest cat had all the genetic material, all the genes for creating separate lions and tigers and house cats, etc.
So basically, they take the crocodile logic. For example, the common ancestor of crocodiles and ducks would be a literal crocodile, like a blend of both animals, and they apply the same thing to what they believe in, like the common ancestors of cats. They believe that all cats have a common ancestor, but they also think that common ancestor had a blend of all these different species in one, basically.
Yes,
Wow.
that was their conclusion. It was fascinating. They also
It's amazingly done.
it was very uh the only interesting thing about that movie was probably their graphics. They had some nice landscapes and some pretty decent graphics, which were about the only entertaining part of the movie. Because you had Ken Ham and his cronies droning on and on about such and such arguments, but yeah, it's very interesting. They did the same thing for sauropods. Uh, for anyone who doesn't know, sauropods are long necked dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So what they did was they took this sauropod morph kind of dinosaur, which I guess is supposed to be like the ancestor of all sauropods. But
Mm-hmm.
what was interesting was they did that, but then they also had like an apatosaurus and then a brachiosaurus also. So makes you wonder how many different kinds of sauropods were there.
Yeah. There's also a thing they cannot define, like new information. They cannot also define what a kind is.
Oh yeah, that word triggers me.
Yeah.
Kinds more than information. I can deal with information. Um, oh, but I've ranted about kinds in I think several of my videos. I actually made a whole video about titled "New Kinds," where I
Yeah.
just go through. I go through three different ways that you can show the idea of kinds is just meaningless. And one of my favorite ways to do it is not even to look at evolution. Just ignore evolution completely. Just look at how the creationists define it. Uh, Kent Hovind and a few others say it's like the species level. John Woodmarap said it was the genus level. Ken Ham says it's family or order. Georgia Purdom has said it's class or super order. Would actually have her in one of my videos saying it, so she can never take it back. Uh, but yeah, just it it could be anything. Why not make it one kingdom, one kind per kingdom? Why not one kind per domain? It's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, it reminds me of two things. One was that video of King Crocodile with Ray Comfort. Basically, when they talk about kinds, Ray Comfort goes from the species level all the way to the domain level in one minute, basically, or in a few minutes. It maybe was cut, but basically, first he defined it as one species, like with humans. Humans are like one kind, we are one species, and we are not the same kind as chimpanzees.
Hmm.
But with dogs, like you have like different species of dogs within one genus. Not only that, maybe even foxes, which are species from different families.
Hmm.
So if they are a kind, then a family is a kind in their case. But then after a while, they talk about bacteria, and the conference goes like, oh, they are still bacteria. They are still the same kind. So bacteria are a kind, really? Like cyanobacteria that can perform photosynthesis is the same kind as an E. coli.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's almost a knee jerk reaction. If you say any taxonomic category, it's practically a knee jerk reaction for them to say, "Oh, that's just a kind."
Yes.
They've just been so conditioned. You know, you talk about you could say, "Oh, there's Dinotherium, which is a group within elephant, or Dinotherians are a group within the elephants." And they say, "Oh, well, that's just one kind." Then you say, "Well, what about elephants as a whole?" Well, that's just one kind. Like, well, wait a minute, which one of these is it? Is it's just any taxonomic category classifies as its own. its own kind. But yeah, you're right. We're more closely related to chimps than chimps are to gorillas,
Yeah.
and yet they would readily class chimps with gorillas as their own kind.
Yeah, and they do, well, at least Answers in Genesis does. It has a website or a web page where it lists some kinds they accept as kinds, and they list like chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas as the pongit kind.
Oh my god!
The outdated
Oh
taxon
wow!
called pongit.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy. They went back to the 1800s
yeah,
to classify all the other non-human apes together. That's hilarious.
yeah.
I love that.
And they put the lesser apes like the gibbons and the siamangs. They put in another category.
Hylobatid, which
Yes.
is just its own little family, gets its own kind for some reason, even though these other three different families are all classed together. But ah, it makes my head swim. What you know the story of Pongaday? I bet you watch
Yes.
Aaron Raw. So yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, Pongaday was created by Carolus Linnaeus basically because he realized humans are apes, and but his it wouldn't jive with his creationism.
I think somebody else created because Carlos Linnaeus first categorized humans along the apes, but
Okay,
somebody
okay,
else
yeah,
created
that might have been it.
the Pongit category for apes except humans.
Yeah, it's just
Basically.
it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious uh, because they uh sometimes called, let's see, Pongidae. Wonder if I can. Yeah, at any rate, it's just it's so funny because even by creationist standards, at least by honest creationist standards, uh humans are classed as apes.
Yeah.
And so, and they know this, or at least the honest ones do. But yeah, I mean, oh man, they well, this reminds me also of Genesis Paradise Lost because they make two arguments in that movie um regarding the similarities. Well, actually, there might be two different articles, but I'll get back to the second one in a moment. So regarding the similarities between chimps and humans. Well, Answers in Genesis freely admits that we share upwards of 97 or so percent of our DNA with chimps. Um, they say that there's one article they have like, oh, things creationists and evolutionists agree on, and it says, yep, we're very genetically similar to chimps. Don't know why, but that's the way it is. In the movie Genesis
God did
Paradise,
it. God did
yeah,
it.
exactly, God did it right. Um, in the movie Genesis Paradise Lost, they have one guy say, uh, no, he says, no, we're not actually that closely related to chimps. And then they have another guy say, yes, we are that closely related to chimps, but statistical similarities don't matter. And my jaw hit the floor when they said that.
Like the genie from Aladdin.
Exactly. I don't. And the guy who said it was a microbiologist, and or quote microbiologist, but I was just
Microbiologist employed by the Answers in Genesis, basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted that someone would say the statistical similarities among organisms don't matter. Do you know what a paternity test is?
Yes.
It's like, what?
And this is where special pleading comes in. Well, of course, we can accept that in case of humans because we believe that humans are related. But when it comes to like chimpanzees and humans, no, we can't use that. No, because reasons.
Um,
Yeah.
and this, yeah, this is it brings me to the second article I was thinking of. There's interestingly, for anyone who doesn't know, there was an article in Answers in Genesis authored by Todd Wood, the same guy, the same Todd Wood who appeared in the movie Is Genesis History and also has
Is he the baraminologist, the champion basically
yes.
of baraminology? Yes, of according to Nephilim 3, baraminology.
Um,
Yeah, that's really.
well, I think creationists probably shouldn't like him because Todd Wood has admitted in his blog that there are gobs and gobs of evidence for evolution, that he only doesn't believe in evolution because he wants to be a creationist. But he also wrote an article for Answers in Genesis, which is still on the Answers in Genesis website, where he says that Australopithecus sediba
Oh
is in
yes,
the
I've
same.
seen that. Yes, yes. Oh, go
Yes.
sorry, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's in the same kind as humans, which
Yes.
I thought, whoa,
Holy
wow,
shit. Holy shit.
yeah. Um, and that's not the first time they've conceded something that huge. There's another article I think Todd Wood did with Kavanaugh, David Kavanaugh, um where they say yes, all the horses from Hyracotherium all the way on up to the modern horse are all in the same kind. Every single one of them. Uh
Okay.
yeah, so creationists have been hounding for years that the horses that these little five-toed horses like Hyracotherium are not related to the modern horse, or they're in a separate kind. And then David Kavanaugh and Todd Wood say, nope, they are. All horses are related to each other, and it's like, holy crap.
Yeah, and also Answers in Genesis has like a plaque or like in their quote unquote museum
Mm-hmm.
where they show the evolution of the horse. They accept it, but they think it happened within like 100 years, basically.
Yeah.
Just after the flood and right before when people started making drawings of horses, even though we have drawings of horses thousands of years before the flood.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
in France and Germany, yeah. Yeah, oh,
yeah.
it is just it's hilarious. And it's also hilarious, I think, that creationists are still attacking the horse evolution thing because they don't read their own material. By and large, creationists don't read creationism. Only a very small portion of them actually look at it. They might hear like a sermon by Ken Ham or something like that where he says, you know, he makes some argument, but that's it.
Yeah.
Most of
And
the time, they're not going to take the time to read it.
yeah, but these disagreements arise because of like the flood, right? The flood story.
Mhm.
They have to believe that basically mostly organisms are unrelated like that, but they have to accept relatedness of a degree based on the flood story because they have to have like a few individuals that can fit on the ark. So and
Mhm.
that's why they accept a degree of common ancestry. Of course, they have to find a balance between the two. But when you have a few individuals that can fit on the ark, now you have like a super evolution that needed to be taken place right after the flood in order to have the same amount of species that we have now.
Mhm.
Even if we accept like uh, there were no tigers and lions during the time of Egypt, like that. That just
Yep.
recently were speciated.
Mhm.
That's still too fast for evolution to occur like that. Like a one species splitting off into tigers, lions, cheetahs, and house cats and all the others in a few thousand years is just amazingly fast. And they believe and they will say we never seen a kind turn into a different kind over. Yeah, it is just amazingly ironic
Oh yeah. Yeah,
to see that.
yeah. I did a video titled "The Scientific Method," where I just talk about a basic outline of the scientific method, and and I use an Answers in Genesis article as my uh I guess as my foil. I use it to show, hey, this is what good methodology is. Here's an example of what good methodology isn't. Um, and so I use this Answers in Genesis article because I bet you've heard the claim they make that the average dinosaur size was about that of a sheep, so they could get them all onto the ark. You've heard them? Have you heard them say that?
So sorry, repeat it again. I was looking up something up. Sorry.
Okay. The Answers in Genesis likes to say that the average dinosaur size was that of a sheep, so they could get them. They could get the dinosaur kinds onto the ark. You've heard them say stuff like that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
I also heard him say that the animals on the ark were juveniles, basically. So
yeah,
you had a juvenile tyrannosaur
right, yeah.
that could fit on the ark.
So they originally made that claim that the average dinosaur size was of a sheep, or juvenile, back in the original Answers book, which was like 94 or 5, something like that, mid 90s. And so, and the person who wrote the chapter on that, on dinosaurs on the ark, was Ken Ham, none other than the Ken Ham himself. So, as a citation for that claim in the book back in the 90s, he cites two sources. He cites uh, a book by Jack Horner and Don Lessem titled "The Complete T-Rex," which I think they were doing on the Tyrannosaurus Sue, which I think had been recently discovered at the time, or they were just talking about it. Either way, that was one of the sources. So not a technical source. The other source that they used for that claim was, I kid you not, it was Michael Crichton's book Jurassic Park: The Lost World. That was the other source for that claim.
Repeat the last part. Jurassic
This,
Park.
The Lost World is the second Jurassic Park book. That was their source for the claim that the average dinosaur size was that of a sheep.
Oh my, really?
Yeah, you can still okay, and this is the best part. 20 years go by, they write a second Answers book, and they write an article on the Answers in Genesis website about the average dinosaur size. They do a quote analysis of dinosaur sizes. They still cite Jurassic Park 20 years later.
And why the Lost World? Why? If you are going to cite a movie, why not a good movie? Why not why not the first one?
Exactly. Yeah, they in the
Oh,
book.
PC Myers.
Oh, hello.
Yo.
Hello.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't stay long though. Today is the Women's
Oh.
March. I gotta go stand in solidarity.
Ooh, is there one in Baton Rouge?
I don't know. There's one in Morris, Minnesota. Come on up.
All right, I'll be there. I'll be there tomorrow. They
You'll miss it all. You'll miss it, but it's yeah.
Yeah. But this. So yeah, 20 years later, they still cite Jurassic Park as their proof that the average dinosaur size was that of a sheep. I was telling Nestling about how Answers in Genesis cites Jurassic Park as their source that the average dinosaur size was of a sheep. No joke. We actually looked it up. Yeah, I asked RJ to find the source of that claim, and yeah, Jurassic Park. So they do this whole analysis.
Next time they will cite the next Jurassic World movie to claim that all the animals could have been buried in a single event or something like that.
Yeah, and so the other funny part of the article was that I looked at in my video was that to do their analysis, they decide, okay, we're taking like I think it was 200 or so dinosaur sizes, but we're excluding all birds from our analysis because we've arbitrarily decided that birds aren't dinosaurs. And then they go further, though. It gets funnier because they even exclude clearly dromaeosaurid these clearly dromaeosaurid feathered dinosaurs like Microraptor because they're too much like birds. They actually say that in the article. They say arguable bird-like dinosaurs like Microraptor. It's hilarious. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen because the irony is screaming.
Right. Have you read Woodmarup's analysis
of what?
Of how many animals fit on the ark?
Oh, is that the feasibility study?
Yeah.
A little bit.
The one where he uses the mode instead of the median in his calculation.
Oh, well, I mean, because they do say the average dinosaur size, but Answers in Genesis goes with the median, and so people are still saying the average, even though they advertise it as the average. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I've read a little bit about it because I know he says the kind is a genus, is the genus level, for some reason. But
Oh, right. Yeah. Most of the creationists nowadays use the family level, but okay.
Yeah, except for humans, of course.
Right.
using
Yeah.
creation science to demonstrate evolution.
Yes. I was looking for this. You were mentioned Todd Wood, the paramnologist of creationist, and somebody else used his methods to demonstrate that early birds like Archaeopteryx and such show a continuity with other non-avian dinosaurs. Basically, it says that early birds and non-avian dinosaurs are the same kind.
That's awesome.
According to the creationist method itself.
Aha.
It's awesome.
That is hilarious. Oh my goodness.
Okay. And it's got published in a serious journal. Wow. All right.
Yeah, so if anybody in the live chat can look it up, it's free. Basically, yeah, if you can find it for free online. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I just found the PDF of it. Philip J. Center. That name sounds familiar.
And
But
this,
wow,
this
I
is
would definitely have to read this.
this is what you get when you lay out strict criteria for your methods. It can be used against you.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I've read a few baraminological papers by Georgia Purdom. She does one on how to determine what a kind is, and I think one of the funniest ones she does is called cognitum, which is, I kid you not, it says if it looks like a new kind or a different kind, it probably is.
Wow.
Like if you look at two cat, I think it's like a cow or a normal cow and then like a bull of some kind. She says, well, these look like they should be in a kind, so they probably are. Just eyeball it. All bacteria look the same, so just eyeball it.
Just
Yeah, they're all little. Yes, our kind is littleness.
do they take a poll like basically they have a conference and they have two pictures of two animals and they say, okay, are these two the same kinds? Take your pick, and then one half says I and the other half says no. And what do they do now?
Well, remember, Kent Hovind says you can just take a 5-year-old and do it.
Yeah.
So they just bring up, the favored 5-year-old and say, all right, pick them out, start picking.
Uh-huh.
All these guys with flagella all look the same. Okay, even if they're eukaryotes and some are prokaryotes, they're all one kind. All amoeboid protists look the same. So good times. I do actually have conferences for baraminology though, which makes you wonder what they talk about, because
like
hey,
like walking in the Twilight Zone.
well, I mean, I just imagine they're like, hey, did you figure out what a kind is? No, did you? No. I thought you would.
They usually revert the problem like, oh, have you defined what the species is? Like that's how they play the game basically. Well, we haven't figured out what the kind is, but you haven't figured out what the species is either. So there you go. That's
yeah, but our whole point is that the boundaries are really, really blurry.
Yeah.
So that there's no barrier to transitions between these different so-called kinds. And they're trying to argue the opposite, that they're really strict and hard and you can't cross them.
Yeah.
So the burden's on them. They better come up with a good, solid definition.
Yeah, which is well, see what's interesting. We were mentioning transitional fossils earlier. What I've seen now is that when they do is originally they wouldn't even accept if you said like Tiktaalik has features of both fish and tetrapods, like it has the head and neck, and but it also has like fins, but then the wrists are intermediate between fish and tetrapods. But then they'll say they used to, they wouldn't even give it a second thought, but now they say, well, yes, it has those because it's a chimera of features.
Mm-hmm.
It has advanced and primitive characteristics because, well, God made it that way. So
well, but they're kind of stealing from the real scientific literature, because we freely admit that there are many species that are a mosaic of traits. because evolution is not linear, it's not continuous, it's different populations, different individuals. So you get this mix of different properties within individuals, and it's not a problem for evolution. Chimeras would be.
The platypus is the offspring of a mammal and a duck. So,
and that's just gross misinterpretation of the evidence. Yeah.
Not if you ask Gene McCarthy.
Sad realization that it used to be that mammals laid eggs just in the past, and they don't understand that simple thing. It used to be the norm for mammals to lay eggs. But P.C. Myers, how long do you think you have to stay here?
Maybe half an hour.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
so we have plenty of time then.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yes, I will give you. I'll give you all the answers.
Because I have a few questions laid up here that we can tackle. We have like
okay.
How does new genetic information arise in evolution? We have talked about that previously, but maybe you have something to add. How do you respond to a question like that?
That it's trivial. When they bring that up, I'm just kind of dumbfounded because I don't understand where they're coming from, because there are so many genetic mechanisms that generate all kinds of interesting information. Just unequal crossing over, for instance, will generate duplications and deletions. So what is their problem? If you duplicate a large segment of DNA, that's an increase in the information content of the DNA. Where do you go from there? You can't just deny that. It happens.
They would. I think we were saying they would. Well, they can't even define what information is. Yeah. So how can we provide them with an example if they're like, well, no.
Right. Well, information theorists, they look at this stuff. They say, yeah, that's, they don't have those kinds of presuppositions that too many creationists do, that there's, they expect that the only way to increase information is through intent, that there has to be some kind of purposeful intent behind it. And using that circular definition, they exclude all examples of non-intentional increases in information.
Yes, and there was one paper that I think it's called The Evolution of New Information, where they used Shannon information theory and also defined new information in the genome as something that tells about the environment of the organism. Like if it doesn't tell something about the environment, then it's not information, or if it does, then it counts as information. And when they simulate natural selection, the information content goes up, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the magic word to use in your PubMed or Google Scholar searches is innovation, evolutionary innovations. And there's lots of material on how evolutionary innovations arise. They get away from some of the expectations that creationists impose on it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think if they were honest about their definitions and their criteria, then they probably would have been satisfied by now.
Yeah.
But they choose not to be. We were talking about earlier. There's a structure. Have you heard of the water strider Ragavalia?
Well, I've heard of it, so sure, but what about it?
This genus developed a new structure, like this new little fan. In other water striders, they don't have this fan, but this genus Ragavalia developed a new fan, so they can move to a new environment now, which upstream, which is what other water striders can't do. So, but I think they would claim, as we were saying, that the information for that structure was always in the genome. They just had to Yeah, it just had to be turned on.
Yeah, but that's kind of a circular non-definition to exclude a bunch of things. That if I don't know the details of that particular innovation, but all you need to do is make lots of branchy, thin materials to have to increase surface area for surface adhesion, and the code for making little bitty spiky things is right there in the genome. So they're just re-expressing it. Does that mean it's not an innovation? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, they were honest. Well, never mind. They can choose to either or stay creationist. So,
Yeah.
oh man, but it's a Nestle there. What is that paper?
Oh, I was looking for this paper too. It's about I think a salmonella. They basically removed one gene from it that performs a specific function, but it has another gene that performs the same function but not on the same efficiency, basically. And they let it evolve to adapt to this function. So what happened was this gene that can perform multiple functions but not on each not very specific. It duplicated, and the duplication basically specialized to replace the old gene that was lost. So old information regained basically by evolution, by gene duplication, according to this paper. Very nifty.
Yeah. And there's so many. I mean, I'm just bringing up this page from PubMed. This is just searching for evolutions and innovation, or evolutionary innovations, and it's just this nonstop collection of all kinds of stuff everywhere. This is a non-issue to argue about.
Yeah.
The absence of innovation and evolution.
It's also dank, but even if they don't want to define what the new information is, they still lose on this point, because we have these many examples of how new genes can form, and we have even explained like the evolution of hemoglobin by means of gene duplication.
Right. Yeah, and look here, there's 179 pages, each one with 20 articles on it. It's just gracious.
Yeah, I plan on doing a couple of videos in the near future on irreducible complexity. That was something I've been thinking about tackling, because it keeps arising, and it's so arbitrary, because they just see they lose their minds every time they see a molecular structure. They're like, oh my goodness, look at how amazing this thing is. It must have not been evolved.
Yeah.
I was talking to, or I saw a guy the other day who said he was talking to RJ, and he said, oh, topoisomerase couldn't have evolved. And so I typed in evolution of topoisomerase in Google, first paper, origin and evolution of topoisomerases. So I checked out his page. He had another article at the very top that said ribosomes can't evolve, origin and evolution of ribosomes.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that guy's been pestering me too. Was this Phil Korn or something like that?
Oh, I don't even remember his name. I was only I just there are so many creations out there I don't remember.
Yeah. But that seems to be a really common strategy. Just, find something complicated in extant cells and say, oh, this could not have evolved.
Oh yeah, kinesins or ATP synthase or whatever it is.
It reminds me of one of your lectures, like when you begin complexity. You will be amazed of how complex this pathway is. Complexity.
It's what they do.
But but it's
and we could easily outdo them. We could find so many things that are even more complex than what they're talking about. I mean, food webs, for instance, go to the ecological level and take a look at a food web. And it's a nightmare of all kinds of complicated, transient interactions between different species. And, when you look at it, you say, well, how could that possibly have evolved? Yet it did. It's just a matter of not having, that it's not working towards a specific goal. It's just saying, okay, whatever works, works.
Yeah.
And when you follow that rule, you spontaneously get all kinds of complexity.
Yeah, and you can have intermediate ecological systems. Like first you have like a barren wasteland, and then you have the pioneers species that will establish like the basis, and then you have like for example the first herbivores, and then the predators, and then so on and so on. So it gets a very complex system.
Right.
Yeah. What is it? The Mastoterm darwiniensis, Darwin's termite named after Australia, not Charles. That has it has a protozoan in its gut. A Mixotricha paradoxa. There we go. And that protozoan has spirochete and bacillus bacteria living on it. It's absolutely crazy looking. But it's like the termite was there first, and then it took in the protozoan, and then the bacteria infected the protozoan afterwards.
Right.
But I think they also, whenever they're talking about irreducible complexity, they just throw out all this jargon and expect you to be wowed into silence by it. Then they can say, "Hey, so it's irreducibly complex." That's all I've ever seen. They look at like a photosynthesis, even though there are papers utilizing thermodynamics to understand the origin and evolution of photosynthesis.
Yeah. But I have made a G+ post on the evolution of photosynthesis. If let's see, I can put it up for those who are interested. Let me see here.
I love that we can use thermosynthesis to model thermodynamics to model photosynthesis. I think that's awesome.
Right. And when you look at photosynthesis too, it's a beautiful example that there are two different photosynthetic pathways that evolve somewhat independently, and then they merge together to make the Z story that goes on in photosynthesis. And it's obviously an example of merging two different processes by natural mechanisms to make a more sophisticated, more complex, and more efficient process. And
there it is. Yeah.
Sorry. Right there. In memory of Jean, I can't pronounce the name. Here's a short explanation of oxygenic photosynthesis in its evolutionary origins. Well, of course, I won't read it all. You can look it up on G+ on my post, and all citations are included. And basically here, for some beautiful pictures, which basically tells it all. Here you have like purple bacteria. They have a simple photosynthesis system, and green sulfur bacteria. And basically oxygenic phototrophs, like plants and cyanobacteria, are basically both systems in one.
Right.
So horizontal gene transfer was a major role in the evolution of oxygenic photosynthesis. Yes. So very, very interesting stuff.
Well, yeah, I made I just made a video on two videos on abiogenesis, and the second one I point out how the acetyl-CoA pathway bears an uncanny resemblance to the type of reaction that occurs at alkaline hydrothermal vents. It's like this pathway is basically occurring geochemically, and so now organisms are doing it biochemically. Very neat stuff.
You've been reading Nick Lane and Bill Martin, haven't you?
I have maybe been absorbing their material.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the Vital Question was fascinating. I thought it was an amazing book.
Yeah, Life Ascending is also good. So,
there are a few times I've had to like catch my breath while reading a book, but I think that was one of them. The book, what was it? We were talking about Everyone is African. Certainly didn't make me do that. I finished that book. just recently, and I was like, okay.
But
All right.
that goes into another question that we have. But first, I want to basically bring two things up. One of my favorite examples that I know from UPZ of new information in the genome is the evolution of the antifreeze gene of Antarctic ice fish. Yes, that was very interesting. And my jaw basically dropped when you explain that these antifreeze proteins are made in the pancreas, just like the ancestral gene, and it's also still produced into the intestines before it's reabsorbed into the bloodstream. And my mind basically goes, that makes total sense if this evolved from a pancreatic proteinase. It just it just clicked in my mind, and it was an amazing moment of like eureka moment for me.
Right. Yeah. And also, when you look at the gene, it's a little short fragment that's just repeated over and over again.
I will bring a figure.
Sure. And it's this little fragment is the same as the beginning of a proenzyme that is synthesized in the pancreas. So it's clearly an example of here's a truncated gene that then just got repeated iteratively to make a lot of copies so that you can synthesize lots and lots of antifreeze protein. This whole story is really clearly explained in Sean Carroll's book, The Making of the Fittest, which is another one I recommend. We're actually using it in our introductory biology course.
What about the Serengeti rules? Have you read that one?
Yeah, I've read it.
Is it good?
But I can't tell my students to read everything Sean Carroll has ever written.
Right. So is it good?
Here you have it. Like the top gene is you remarked on during the presentation that it's very ugly colored.
Yep.
Yeah. But it still explains it well, basically. The top is the AFGP gene. I think that's the antifreeze gene.
Antifreeze glycoprotein, yep.
Yes. And the B is the trypsinogen-like protease. It's the ancestral gene. And you have like an intermediate gene. That's also very interesting. Basically, it got first duplicated, and the duplicate formed this protein, and that formed by another duplication the AFGP protein.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's also a nice example of a molecular fossil that you find that intermediate state preserved as a bit of junk in the DNA as well.
So basically, we have genetic information of a fossil, of a genetic fossil. Yeah.
Makes me want to know more about genetics, which I'll have to take like next semester.
Oh, yeah, good idea. You need to take that.
Principles of genetics, yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Also, before I forget, maybe you don't remember, but I was the one who asked you the question about the evolution of gonads when you made that very beautiful video about how the gonads develop. To me, they look very much like what's it called? Kidneys.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe just like when our jaws they develop from pharyngeal gill slits, which parallels the evolution of our jaws from gills. Maybe because gonads looked like kidneys, maybe they evolved from kidneys. But you said no to that question.
Maybe. I mean, the thing is that those precursor cells, those stem cells for the reproductive tissues, are different than kidneys.
Oh.
But what they share in common is an association with excretory organs.
Yes.
Because if you're making gametes, you got to get them out of your body somehow. So,
and if you already have an excretion system, why not use it? Basically.
Yep. So
magic.
Tie them in with that. With the excretory system, you've also got a system of ducts that evolve. So you've got this region where you build plumbing. That's where you're going to put the gonads.
Building your theme park right around the sewage system.
Yeah. I mean, I could imagine somewhere on another planet and around a distant star, maybe species that evolved their reproductive organs around their mouths,
Oh.
their
Uh,
intake.
I have seen some speculative artists drawing these creatures with basically they have the genitals in their face-like structures.
Yeah,
Not really their face, but they look like faces if you look at them. They
right.
call I don't know what the name was of these creatures.
I don't know. Did you see it on Rick and Morty?
Exactly.
What a good show! What a good show!
Yeah. Yeah, but they've got some aliens with things dangling below their chin.
Oh,
And
that's right. They did.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would actually be a fairly logical way to do things. But I think building your reproductive structures near your kidneys is also fairly rational to do.
Easy. That brings me a lot of joy to know that you watch Rick and Morty.
Oh, doesn't everybody? Come on.
All right, fair, fair. It is it's pretty great. Like last semester, it was I just felt slammed by all the classes, and so I watched two shows: Rick and Morty and John Oliver. That was it.
Uh-huh.
That was all I watched.
Okay, those are good ones to watch.
I mean, I couldn't even keep up with my usual like superhero shows that I like, so I have to catch
Uh-huh.
those on breaks or binge them on breaks, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
At least you didn't economize by watching Fox News instead.
uh, I do follow them on Twitter because I like to see
Oh,
the funnies sometimes. I get like Ben Stein will pop up in my feed every so often because he's on at like the wee hours of the morning, I think, and so he's very funny.
so what do I see on the
I
screen?
have looked up these creatures. It's called Snaet, I think. It's
Oh,
made by Koosman, and it's of a very very imaginative. Like these are the creatures. They look familiar, but here is their mouth, and this head is where the genitals are, basically.
uh-huh.
So yeah, it's very cool to. And he has actually done not a real lecture, but a presentation about these creatures that he has imagined.
Yeah, what I like is that he's being consistent with the body plan.
Yeah,
Where that these look, it looks like his key difference is that the ingestive structures are associated with something lower on the chest, and brain and head sensory organs are separate from that. And then they all look that way.
yeah. He also explains that some of them, like this one, okay, I don't know if you can see it. It's here. Like this one has arms, and in other species, these arms are like these legs.
Uh-huh.
And the arms later evolved, like in this one, to be a jaw, a lower jaw.
Oh, so they evolved jaws from limbs,
Yeah,
which makes sense.
from the front limbs, yes.
Just like insects or something, arthropods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like that.
very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's
Anyway, now more about real evolution and less about speculative evolution. It's still cool, but let's see here. Maybe another question that I had from G-Man, and you know him.
yeah. It's not going to be a good question then. Is it?
This is going to ruffle your feathers really badly.
Okay.
Basically, he made a video. It's called "Don't Assume Evolutionists Are Telling You the Truth," and he made this huge claim about evolution and racism, and he has blamed like the transatlantic slave trade on evolution, and even hold your don't freak out. Even the KKK, he has blamed that on evolution.
Makes sense.
Okay. This
I see no
sounds like
problem here. Clearly, all true.
yeah. This sounds like an anachronism to me.
The Ku Klux Klan, baby.
Yeah. Okay. Is he arguing that Darwin's publication of The Origin in 1859 started the Civil War, maybe? Because it really doesn't fit. Yeah, so Darwin was an abolitionist. He opposed the slave trade. He published long after the slave trade was established, but also long after England had ended it. So that's kind of a weird argument to make.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the whole. Some people are more evolved than others, and
Yeah, I know.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, there definitely are scientific racists who try to use evolution to justify believing in the inferiority of certain races.
Quote, scientific racists.
Yes, well, when you say scientific racists, there's always big air quotes around scientific.
There were even like the people who draw maps of the world, like the geographists. They have purposely choose one map that makes Europe bigger than Africa, in order to, and they also place it, of course, the Europe above Africa to make the North look above the Africa, of course, and that is how they kinda, sort of, justified their superiority. But that doesn't mean, of course, that there are no such things as geography, of course. But yeah.
Right. Well, I mean,
so scientists, of at least many scientists in the past, have used whatever they can to justify their own bigotry and prejudice.
Yeah.
Including evolution also. But in evolution itself, if you read textbooks or scientific papers, there is nothing there to imply racism. So I have to take this.
Yeah. The thing is that there are conventions that have historical reasons for them, and things like drawing Europe and the North as at the top of the map. It's it is kind of it was kind of an arbitrary decision, right? They could have drawn it any way they wanted. They could have drawn maps with east on top and west on the bottom, and it would just make no big difference as far as their use was concerned. But you got to put them somewhere, so that's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I actually just finished Everyone is African, and it was kind of interesting, but for a small book, I have to say it was kind of boring. He made his whole case in the first 2 chapters, and then the latter 4 or so were just kind of going into these more arcane details about it.
Sure.
Except for the bell curve thing, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I think his heart is in the right place, but there's a problem with making the claim that we're all African, because it kind of erases some of the differences between us. And
well, yeah, I mean,
there really are historical, social, cultural differences between how the different treated. That's got to be respected.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of doing the same kind of tongue-in-cheek way that Dawkins does with his shirt. Yeah, you're right. I mean,
yeah. So, better book. Have you read Rutherford's new book, A Short History of Everyone Who Ever Lived?
I've seen it on the shelves, but no, I actually just started reading a book titled "Understanding Human Evolution."
Who's that by? That's not Zimmer's book, is it? What is?
Oh, actually, I don't even have it on me. I think I left it back at school. Let's see. Understanding.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
No problem. We were just talking about good books, and I was recommending Rutherford's book, Short History of Everyone Who Ever Lived.
Oh, it's McKee, Poiré, and McGraw.
Okay.
How do I pronounce that? Yeah. And so it's pretty interesting so far. I love anthropology. I love it a lot. It's really cool. I'm actually taking an archaeology class this semester.
Very good.
It funny story actually. My archaeology professor is like, you can call me by my first name, and then immediately after I have physics, and he says, you will call me Doctor So and So because I went to I went to grad school for however many years. Which one of
Yeah.
those are you closer to?
You know, I've always told my students just call me PZ, but lately I've been thinking that there's a problem there because the data shows that women professors are much likelier to be called by their first name than their last name.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that there's a history of some disrespect towards women academics. And so although I like to be casual with my students, I'm beginning to think, maybe I'm making things rougher for other people by doing that. That we ought to impose some things where we say, okay, yes, this person has just spent half their life
Right.
doing all this work, and that you've got to show some respect for that. Yeah, so us casually entitled people can get away without worrying about it, but other people, it might be more important
Yeah.
that we enforce some standards.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've always called my professor, even when they tell me you can call me Bob, I say, okay, Dr. Jones. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
I can't really, for most people, I really can't do the first name thing. Even people who are just like not that much older than me, it's still like, hello, Mister.
Right. Oh, it's that Southern thing, isn't it?
It probably is.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Even though Northern people don't like to be called yes, ma'am, or don't like to hear yes, ma'am, for some reason.
No, I wouldn't object if you said yes, ma'am to me. That's okay.
Well, I've heard it's like North. It's yes, ma'am. You only say to like I think it's older women, isn't it?
Really?
That's what I've heard from some people who went up to the Yankee land.
To my country, you mean? Yeah.
Exactly. Where the
I don't know if
Confederate
that's-
flags still fly down here.
And they still fly up here too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. But again, there's quirks of different cultures. I mean, I come from
Different cultures.
yeah. I come from Scandinavian people who were all farmers and had fairly formal. If you ever listen to Prairie Home Companion, there's this kind of standoffishness about Scandinavians with one another, and it provokes a little bit more formality, I think, between them. So yes, ma'am would just be fine, or yes, sir, no problem.
Oh, okay.
Prior to when I left, we were talking about evolution and its association with racism that the creationists want to imply.
Right.
Maybe we can more thoroughly address that claim.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to address because there were so many, the eugenics group and all that sort of thing. Those people who did endorse racism with a scientific basis, which clutters up our history.
Which Darwin himself didn't do, but even though
Darwin did not,
even though social Darwinism is named after him, which is basically, I think it's not fair to call it that. I think it should be called social Spencerism or something.
Social Galtonism, something. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's more from that one school of eugenics that emerged after Darwin. I don't think Darwin actually approved that kind of thing.
No.
Although it might have been more because he was he tried to be aloof from social issues. But Darwin was pretty bourgeois, okay? We have to confess to that.
Yeah. If Darwin was alive today, he was probably a racist by today's standards, but by his time standards, he was pretty progressive for his age.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
everyone was racist back then by our standards, and
Yeah.
we'll probably be considered racist by next generation standards too. So, it's
Yeah, but
it's all
the
relative.
thing is that scientific racism is still there. I mean, evolutionary psychology is basically the modern form of scientific racism, where every difference is justified as some kind of optimum that's been selected for. And so all these different groups, there's the assumption that they've evolved in specifically different directions. Um, so that makes it really hard to disavow it, right? Because
Well, yeah.
it's everywhere.
I mean, it's all very ad hoc, I would say.
Yeah.
One of my responses is to such claims is that evolution, as it is currently understood, actually defeats many of the racist claims, like that we didn't evolve from a common ancestor. Some of them still believe that like white people and black people are not related at all. But of course, evolution says not only are we related, we are very closely related. In fact, I have recently viewed some papers that shows that all humans today share one common ancestor around 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. That recently. There was one individual that basically was our great and such father or mother. Probably a man, because men are very proficient in reproducing in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rutherford's book talks about that at great length, about how quickly lineages coalesce in the past. And we're, that to argue that we're distinctly different subspecies is just absurd, because there's just been too much gene flow between us, between all of us.
Yay, gene flow.
Yeah.
Go gene flow. Yeah, which is really interesting. I think because you have these like tribes out in like Africa and like Australia that even though like they're not generally breeding with people from cities or what have you, we're all still the same species, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I think that's really neat.
Yeah. This is my post I made. Hi, my fellow less than 80th cousin. Yep, we are that close related. And I basically a few claims. Our most recent common ancestor around, I was mistaken, around 2,000 to 5,000, not 4,000, 5,000 years ago. And likely lived in East Asia. It is also interesting. Our recent common ancestor lived in Asia because that is the most useful place to be in, to be connected to different continents, like the Americas and also the Australia, in that place. And even further, I maybe you're not familiar with, but there is a point in our ancestry where everyone alive was either an ancestor of us all, or did not left any living descendants today.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it? And that is called
the
IAP point, the identical ancestor point, and that was around 4,000 to 7,400 years ago. So this is also very recent, and around that time there were people in Northern America and also of course in Africa, all over the world. So basically everyone alive has ancestors that lived in all over the world, basically. So you cannot claim that you are a pure breed of white or whatever you want to claim.
Yeah.
Which and this got really pissed. This got some people really pissed off because some race realists commented on my post. They were pissed off, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because the math is kind of hard to understand, and conceptually it's not intuitive. But once you start working through it, man, it's kind of obvious how closely linked we all are. It's You just have to think of humanity as this great braided stream of genes all kind of flowing and flux together.
Yeah.
And
We are like a meandering river with very different connecting lines and splitting lines and so on and so forth.
right.
And basically the race realists want to claim that, oh no, this is a separate river, totally different from anything else, but in this meandering mess of flowing and flowing out.
Yeah, and it's total nonsense to argue that, but that's what they do.
Oh well. Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
It means that every breeding event is incestuous.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can say that of really anything. We're all related ultimately. So
yeah.
There's also another study that showed that if you marry someone that lived very close to you within the same country or something, most likely they are within your 10th cousin, or probably less, like 5th cousin or something. At least between the 10th.
Unless you're in Louisiana. And it's closer.
Yeah, my wife and I have traced our ancestry back. We haven't found a specific link between us yet, but when you discover that you've got relatives who are practically neighbors in the same small region in Norway 400 years ago, yeah, we were probably related then.
Yeah.
I took a quote psychology and sociology end quote class in high school, and my teacher was doing ancestry stuff. So she found I think a Seventh-day Adventist website, like a pedigree website, and so she manages to trace her lineage back, and it goes just like all the way back to a point, and then they flip it and go to biblical chronology at a point. It's hilarious.
Yes, there's an imaginary transition in there, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're and according to this website, everyone is actually like descended from Jesus or whatever. It was ridiculous. I don't even know how that's physically possible, but evidently it is. Evidently it happens.
Jesus is just an alias for Genghis Khan.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah. There's also this concept of more evolved that creationists like to bring up with racism, associating it with evolution. But I've never seen anything in any paper or textbook that I've read with more evolved than X or Y.
Well, yeah. I mean that whole idea just stems from a lack of understanding of how evolution works. I mean, it's like the people who say, like, why are there still monkeys or bacteria or whatever? Well, you look at an E. coli. E. coli is just as evolved as we are.
Yeah.
Exactly. It had exactly the same amount of time to evolve. It's just evolved differently.
It's also had many more generations.
Evolution is not a ladder with white people on top, and then come black people, and then come apes and something like that. It's just a very it's just a tree basically, with everything on the same level, something like that. Of course, there is actually no discussion on what is more evolved or less evolved, or it doesn't even make sense when you are studying evolution. It never comes up even.
Yeah. Well, I hate to say it, but I have a march to go to.
Oh, yay,
march! Yay, march away.
Yeah, I'll go. Solidarity and all that kind of good stuff. But it's been fun some of the time.
Oh, well, do you know what time? Are they like closing it like a certain time, or they be like out all night? Do you know?
The march?
Like the marches. Do they generally? How late do they go generally?
Well, this is a small town, so
okay.
It's going to be maybe an hour. But then my wife is also one of the organizers. She's a rabble rouser.
Everyone's like, 6:30, time for dinner. All right, go home.
So we'll see.
PG, one last question: do you have any videos planned for the future?
Yeah, I've got one that's half done. That's just about intelligent design.
Oh.
Yeah, the problem is I'm supposed to be writing a grant right now. I'm slacking.
But
And classes.
you are wasting time on the ID. It's
Yeah, well, and I'm wasting time on classes. No, that's not wasting time. That's my job. So, um, yeah, so I better get on. I got to do the march, and then I got to get cracking on this grant and get cracking on classes. And okay, so talk
Good
to you
luck,
later.
Casey. Good luck.
Yep.
Thanks for having. Oh, thanks for being here. Well, two left. Oh, Jackson, are you there?
And then there were two. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
then there were
I was
two.
looking up the I was looking at the women's march in Baton Rouge, seeing if or what time it ends, because it's going to be like a 4-hour drive, and then I don't know. I don't really see anything yet, but oh well, such is life. Were there any more questions from G-Mans?
Yes, he made a point of another question, but he was confused about how people say that humans are fish and not fish at the same time.
Oh yeah, you guys were explaining that to Rationality Rules. I remember that.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? He was on the Great Debate Community, and you guys were explaining that.
Oh yeah,
to him.
I don't think we ever got into that. I think there was a discussion about the definition of atheism, right?
Oh yeah, I think that
Yes.
was it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
I have basically removed myself from the discussion because it's really it's too trivial basically to define what an atheist is. But
Right.
at least in my opinion, if Steve McRae or somebody else is interested in having a discussion with anybody else, I'm fine with. But basically they say they use different definitions of what an atheist is. Like Steve McRae used one definition, it's very strict, and the Rationality Rules uses another definition that's very broad. So I basically pulled out an analogy that in the paraphyletic sense, humans are not fish because fish means every vertebrate or maybe every craniate, everything that has a skull, except for tetrapods. That's the paraphyletic definition of what the fish is. But a monophyletic definition of fish would be every craniate, everything that has a skull, including us. You cannot exclude humans from fish based on our phylogeny.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah.
and that was basically the analogy that I want to pull up. For example, you are a fish and not a fish in two senses. And Steve McRae goes, yes, it's a very good analogy. By the same way, I am a fish and not a fish, according to some definitions, but I'm also not an atheist and an atheist by other definitions.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I rarely I think I fairly rarely do more, or I rarely do the sort of atheistic arguing. I'm much more focused on teaching people about biology.
Me too.
Than dealing with arguments. I've been seeing a lot recently. Stephanie Thomason.
Stephanie Thomason.
Yeah, she's this apologist lady on Twitter, and she's been arguing with like Gonna Go For It and Doc Hackenslash and some other people. She's just been picking lots of fights, and I think she gets beat down a lot in those fights. But they're all talking about like the evidence that Jesus was God and stuff like that. It's like, okay, that's interesting, but I'm a lot less concerned with this stuff than whether or not evolution's true. I'd much rather have a fight with a creationist than a fight with a Christian who accepts evolution.
So basically, I don't care whether Jesus existed. You are still an ape.
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And so it's like if you look at my videos, you see I tackled apologetics in general a lot less than just biology.
Yeah.
But I guess and I mean, I have no problem calling myself an atheist or whatever, but it's just a lot lower down on the list of things to do. But yeah, I do think it's back to your analogy. I do think it's very funny. We're both fish and not fish. I mean,
I of course recognize that many people would not want to accept that they are fish, but I am basically in the strict cladistic group that argues, yeah, if we accept that sharks are fish and carpers are fish and even coelacanths are fish, then we have no rational excuse to not call ourselves fish too, basically,
right?
because we have more things in common with coelacanths than with carpers, and we have more in common with coelacanths and carpers than to sharks.
Yeah, I think that's hilarious. I think it's funny that coelacanths are more closely related to us than they are to goldfish.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. That's hilarious, and makes it should make no sense, but it does because that's how evolution works.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh man, that whole transition.
Same thing. Why snakes are still tetrapods?
Yeah,
even though they don't have 4 legs anymore, we know that they had legs in their ancestry, and we also had gills in our ancestry too. And basically, that makes us fish, very 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 derived fish, basically.
yeah. The snakes are they're very interesting because you have boas, which are the or pythons, whatever it is, the one of the lesser derived snakes. They still have little pelvises.
Yeah.
And little limb buds.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why the heck do they have limb buds? They're snakes. I think they could argue though that that it's simply, Garden of Eden, so they got legs from that event. Or they lost their legs from that event.
Yeah. Except for the fact that we have fossil snakes that have 2 tiny legs left, in the two tiny hind legs, and there's another fossil that has all 4 legs. I think it's called Tetrophysis or something like that.
Oh, Tetrapodophis?
Tetrapodophis, yes.
Yeah, there's Tetrapodophis, there's Pachyrhacus.
Hesiophysis or something, Hesiophysis. But
Oh yeah, Hesiophysis, that's another one, yeah.
Yes. I sometimes forget how to pronounce these names.
Oh no, we're all it's all these dang Latin names we're all struggling to pronounce.
There is one guy that we have in the great debate community with Steve McRae that says that scientists purposely uses these difficult names to keep laymen like him out. Really.
He's probably right. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
basically they use these difficult names to scare people away so that they will just accept you as an authority figure or something like that.
Yeah, King Crocoduck did a video on that a number of years ago, talking about how, like, we use these large words because these words have extreme precision. You have people like Ray Comfort saying, "Oh,
yeah, I just remembered that. Sorry, go ahead."
He's like, "Don't use these big words because, I don't scare me with these big words." But you look at something like a arctometatarsus, for instance, which is this big word. It's like, what the heck does it mean? Well, it is a
it means bones in your feet or something like that.
The arctometatarsus specifically is like the middle bone, the middle foot bone in like theropods, which has been like laterally compressed, whatever. But it has a very specific definition or very specific meaning, and so that's the great thing about science is we have these incredibly specific words. Then you go look at kind, information. What the heck do these words even mean? They don't know. Because they don't oftentimes they don't want to know, because if they do, then
sometimes they use like baramin, like in the same is baramin Latin or Greek? I don't know.
It's Hebrew.
Oh, it's Hebrew. Oh yeah, instead of using Latin tradition like scientists use, they use Hebrew language as a tradition. All right.
Yeah, baramin means created kind. It appears in the Hebrew Bible, and so yeah, they actually what's really funny is they've developed a whole bunch of terms that they've parasitized from paleontology to use in baraminology, like a holobaramin, apobaramin.
Oh yes.
I think plesiobaramin might be another one, but yeah, stuff like that where they take these words, they're like, haha, we can apply these to our own things. Like, so the holobaramin is like, for anyone who doesn't know, it is the group,
whole Barrowman, yes.
the whole
place.
Barrowman, all the house cats and lions and tigers and cheetahs are all one.
Yeah, they're all there was a joke, zeg maar, oh my, like the lions, tigers, and bears, oh my.
Yeah, so yeah, and they do little weird things like that. It's kind of funny. I've actually read about it from Creation Wiki. I've read, like, if you want to know what creationists say about something, Answer to Genesis is sometimes kind of hard to navigate. But I think Creation Wiki is pretty good, and so you can use that to look up, well, what do creationists think about this topic?
Yeah.
But it's very funny. Some of the stuff they say is very funny, like about the reptile mammal transition. They wrote this whole article, and they say like 3 of these little mammal-like reptiles are part of the mouse kind.
What?
Yeah, like Oligokyphus is one of them. This little mammaliform with a double-hinged jaw, which no mammal alive today has, and also laid eggs and has these other weird little reptilian traits. And they say, no, it's part of the mouse kind, even though it has teeth not at all like mice. The anatomy is not like mice. It's oh man, I wanted to pull my hair out when I read it because it just was brazenly stupid.
it reminds me of like when we had our previous hangout with about Nephilim Freeze claims, and one of his claims was that beavers existed with dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, I saw your post about that.
Yeah, and he talked about that particular animal, and it looks like a beaver, but it's not a beaver. It is more distantly related to beavers than the platypus, which are monotremes that laid eggs. So this beaver also laid eggs, probably.
Yeah, definitely. It was like a late Jurassic mammal.
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah, it. Oh man, it's just one of those weird little things. Like, oh yeah, it kind of looks like a beaver, kind of, if you turn your head and close one eye, but it is not
like how the marsupial lion looks like a lion.
Yeah, it just
or the marsupial wolf. How's it called? The marsupial tiger, the thylacine, the recently extinct one.
Yeah, RJ's book Evolution Simon, he also talks about that. One creationist is like, it's so hard to tell the difference between Thylacinus and actual dogs. It's like, no. Marsupials have very distinct skulls. They got these little holes in the roof of their mouth. But it's like that is indicative of someone who does not have the relevant technical knowledge, and yet they consider themselves, the destroyers of Darwinism.
And these are the same people that will assert that hyenas and dogs are the same kind.
Yeah, even though hyenas are more closely related to lions.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're those. It's one of those weird, like, you got cats that look like dogs, and you have dogs that look like cats, kind of thing.
These weird convergent types of these different lines. Yes.
Yeah, I think foxes have several different cat-like characteristics. They're weird little guys. Yeah. They can like climb trees and stuff. But yeah, oh man. And then like all those little kivettes and genettes and I think bensangs and whatever. They're all in their own little cat-like carnivoran group, and those guys actually, kivettes in particular, look a lot like the common ancestor of cats and dogs.
Yes.
Those little kivette guys. Good stuff. Transitional fossils.
And some of them are alive today. Basically. Well, there are a few good examples. I think. Do you know Polypterus?
Polypter. Is that the Beischer?
Yes, the Baisho, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They are in the group of raven fish, like the goldfish and the carpers and so.
Mhm.
Many different. Basically, they are the biggest vertebrate group alive today. So it's just too much to name. But they belong there. But they do share many primitive characteristics that are also shared with some of the coelacanths and the lungfish. So they also have a bit of low B fint, even though they are in the ray fint group. So they are a kind of a transitional fossil between the ray fint and the lobe fint fishes.
Yeah, they still have they're the least derived ray fin fish, but they are
Yes,
like just like us, um they don't have a swim bladder, they have lungs like we
exactly.
do. Some of the earliest or some of the least derived fish groups, I think gars also have, is it gars? It's like there's paddlefish, sturgeon, bowfin and gars. Yeah, there are these other little groups that still have lungs because their swim bladders hadn't yet closed off because the
Yeah,
first teleost fish appeared in the Triassic, I think, like just after the Permian
and
mass extinction.
this is also something that Darwin was a bit wrong about because he thought that our lungs evolved from swim bladders in fish, but it is the other way around.
Yeah,
Fish developed first the lungs, and then some fish later specialized these lungs into swim bladders. And some of them don't connect to the esophagus anymore.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting. I think there's a oh, is this like a 1997 paper I think on how lungs evolved from like outpocketings in the esophagus, which is just brilliant because swallowing your food, you eat your food and you breathe through the same little orifice. That's just brilliant design.
But
Uh,
speaking of brilliant, there are some turtles that have to do the same thing, but at the other end.
yeah, I think I've heard of that. I think that's
Talk
pretty funny.
how intelligent is how intelligently designed is that? Breathing through your anus.
Yeah, yeah.
Next time they will talk out of their ass.
Oh my goodness, that is pretty great. I like that. Oh man, yeah. I had a creationist I invited on my channel. One of the things he wanted to talk about was turtle evolution, saying how it's like it was impossible for like the shell to evolve or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
We ended up talking about cryptozoology because that's his main thing.
Ooh.
Yeah,
There's actually a very interesting story about turtles because it is a very hot topic in classifying where they exactly belong, but it's still not very resolved yet to where they belong. But we do have transitional turtles like Odontocheles,
yeah, and Papacellis and
yeah,
those guys. Yeah.
and also a very primitive one. I think it was Unitosaurus.
Um.
A bit controversial.
Yeah.
Some think they are not related. They belong in the parareptile group. Some do put them alongside turtles. They're one of the earliest stem turtles, basically.
Yeah. 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 Currently they're leaning more towards the idea that turtles are sister to the archosaurs.
Yes.
Leaning towards, so it's like 265 million years ago or something like that. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, around there. So it's interesting. About the only thing that genetics has told us about turtles is that they're not mammals. Yeah, it's
And they mostly show that they are more closer to crocodiles and birds than they are to lizards and snakes.
yeah,
I think mostly.
yeah, and they're mostly going off, I guess, the fossil research prior to this. They're just looking at, oh well, you got these large ribbed parareptiles like the periosaurs, I think is the group the turtles were thought to be
Yeah.
sister to or have branched off from. They're like, oh yeah, these guys have big ribs, so maybe turtles are related to them. And that I actually have a lot of books
Yeah.
that still have turtles classed as parareptiles.
Oh
So,
well. Sorry, Arnold, but Arnold did still a very good video on the evolution of turtles, except that most likely they are not para-reptiles, even though Aron Ra was mostly leading on that hypothesis. And he has recently made a statement that I'm not quoting him verbatim, but he said, "I was hoping that these turtles are the last remaining group of the para-reptiles, but probably they are not. They are diapsids."
Well, that's the great thing about science communicators is we're much more willing to admit when we're wrong than creationists are.
Exactly.
I do appreciate.
And of course, when scientists say, "Oh, we were wrong. It is this," and the creation will jump on. See, they are wrong. They are wrong.
You can't trust anything they say now. Yeah, exactly. It's like
why would you trust anybody who say they are wrong? It's like Rick Comfort during the debate they had with I don't remember who it was. They say Rick Comfort argues about the age of the universe. First it was like a few million years, and then it was like a few thousand million years, and then it was 10 billion, and so on. See, it constantly changes. You can't trust it, but of course, scientists works like that. It's improving. And you cannot improve without changing some things.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to that particular example, it's not like the date fluctuated wildly. It's not like they were saying 1 week it's 1 billion years, and next week they were saying no, it's 42 million. No, it was just progressively going back until now we're just getting more and more accurate on the 13.7 something billion years. It's just getting more accurate now. But yeah, it didn't jump around wildly. They went from maybe it's a few thousand to maybe it's 1 million, now maybe 10 million, 100 million. So same with the KT extinction. Most books will say it's 65 million years old. Now it's like, it's 66 point something.
Yeah,
it's more precise now. They're just getting more. It's not the KT extinction isn't going to jump to 200 million years ago. It's just going to get more precise.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is the great part, because we have the great thing about science, because we have methodology.
I think it was definitely free, but I don't know. No, I'm not sure. But he says the K2. No, it's not. That's not definitely free. It was, I think, was true empiricism who said the K2 boundary.
The K2 boundary?
Yeah, the K2 boundary.
Oh, he says it wrong. Oh my! He said that's true empiricism.
I think it was true empiricism. Yes.
I watched one of his videos. He's gosh, I watched a video he did with he and G-Man were talking, and they were saying, the only way that evolutionists can prove macroevolution is by playing a definition game. I thought, you guys are maroons. Really? It's like, it's definitions. It's, we don't like this definition, so we're not going to use it. It's like, this has been the accepted definition of macroevolution for almost 100 years now.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, you don't like it? Sorry, I guess.
There's also maybe a topic we can go into how the different kinds. Like it's a bit of a straw man, because evolution doesn't say that one kind turned into a different kind. We basically will always be part of our ancestral phylogeny. We evolved from the ape group, the Hominidae. We are still apes. We're still part of the hominid group. And the hominid group evolved from the primate group, and we are still primates. And primates evolved from the placental mammal group, we are still placental mammals, and so on. Of course, we are still animals, despite how creationists want to argue against that. And all animals, including us, are still eukaryotes, just like plants and fungi.
Yeah.
And all the other all the other creatures that most of us don't know about.
I think that'd be a very interesting question to ask them, which I have yet to do so. Maybe I can make a video about it. I don't know. Ask them, like, are we eukaryotes, or were we designed to look like eukaryotes? And are we animals? We have internal digestive tract and all this, or were we designed to look like animals? Are we apes, or were we designed to look like apes? Just all that stuff. Because because we fit all those categories.
Yeah, I have asked a similar question to one creationist one time ago. It was basically like I put forward these arguments from taxonomy that basically the traits that we see not only on morphology but also in genetics points towards this huge twin-nested hierarchy of everything. There are no basically separate kinds of boxes. Everything is basically a box inside a bigger box inside a bigger box, like that. So do you understand? So the twin nested hierarchy. So my question is to this creationist: how do you explain this twin nested hierarchy, if not common ancestry? Because common ancestry predicts that this would be the case. Common ancestry and phylogeny and speciation produces a twin nested hierarchy of traits and genetics. So, and
Right.
his response was basically, God is an artist and he wants to keep his art in order. So he created this hierarchy to keep it ordered or something like that.
Oh yeah, I've heard. I've heard similar stuff to that. Like, what is it? God, it's good, or humans are good design, or whatever. Or when God figures out a good design because he didn't know in advance, he would make good design. Then he likes to use it for a lot of different organisms, which I don't even know. It's such an ad hoc. I mean, all the arguments they make are completely ad hoc. Like
they have no explanation why basically like they will accept that dogs and maybe different types of dogs are related, but they argue very differently with all birds like penguins and ostriches.
Oh yeah.
But why are why do they all belong in this group of birds, and why do all birds belong in the group of dinosaurs, and why do all dinosaurs belong into the bigger group of reptiles, basically?
Yeah, I think
it's the phylogeny challenge of Aaron Ra, basically.
Yeah, I really think you could get them to admit, in most cases, that these organisms are in the same kind. If they look, I think, yeah, I think if they do look a lot alike, even if they're not closely related genetically, you can more or less get creationists to admit to calling them a kind. Like you say, oh well, are hummingbirds and geese the same kind? Or it's like, are there multiple kinds of hummingbirds? Are hummingbirds and geese the same kind?
Yeah.
It's like, well, they both have all the characteristics of birds, so there would either be multiple kinds of birds, or there's one kind, But of course, I don't know what kind means, so
yeah,
it's just whatever goes.
It's looking at taxonomy and basically at one point saying, oh, everything below this point is true. These are true categories within the kind, but everything above is like basically arbitrary and not real categories. So these are basically human constructs.
Yeah,
like the bird category that includes penguins and ostriches and hummingbirds. These are all. This category is basically a human category that is not real.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. How
Yeah.
it's with how where do you draw the line, and why do you draw the line here? And it's a question that they cannot answer. Again, the phylogeny challenge made by Aaron Ra makes this very clear.
Right.
Have you seen that video, the phylogeny challenge by Aaron Ra?
Yeah, he made that back in 2011, I think it was. Yeah, it's a very good video. It's one of my favorite videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the way he lays it all out.
Yeah, I basically ask the question: are these two related, or are these then related to this, and are all these related to this? And when does the answer become no, basically, and why does it become no? And and if you follow this, it's never a point where it comes like, okay, well, how do you distinguish the kinds between this hierarchy of taxonomy? And it's impossible to find the kinds. You can try, but you will fail.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So
perhaps you can go to another question. Let's see here.
Okay.
We have addressed racism, but G-Man has brought up the KKK and blamed KKK on evolution. But as most of us know, the Ku Klux Klan is not only explicitly self-identified as Christian, but also as Protestant and also as creationists. So yeah, they do not believe in evolution. It was amazing. It just shows that G-Man has not even did one minute of Google search, but it's easily found on the internet to see what they believe in.
I mean, yeah, I think most creationist arguments are debunked by a 5-second Google search. as I was talking with like topoisomerase and ribosomes, pretty much every time they claim such and such structure can't evolve, it's like evolution of some structure. Oh, hey, there's a technical paper on it. Kinesins, ATP synthase, whatever, photosynthesis. Yeah, just they're all. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them are there. A lot of the major ones are there, and so I think they're just getting more and more arcane with the the molecular structures they're picking, because they're like, well, crap. Okay, now they've figured out a possible evolution for this one, so we'll pick a different one, and it just keeps going on and on and on, round and round in circles.
Yeah,
you know?
But there's also another observation. They will always ask how this evolved, but they can never answer the question, how was this designed? Like that. Of course, they will just say, okay, the designer did it, or it was designed. That's the only answer they can give. But
yeah,
if we say, oh, it was evolved, and that is the explanation of how it evolved, but they will never accept that answer. But why should we accept their answer of, oh, it's designed? How is the ATP synthase designed? Where are the papers on that?
Yeah, definitely. In Genesis Paradise Lost, there's basically a tornado. All these tornadoes pop up, and the animals and whatnot come out of the tornado. Like all the terrestrial animals, they come out of this giant tornado.
That's how God created it.
Yeah, in this version, that's how it was. Then for humans, it's like he creates the skeleton, then puts muscle on it, or then organs, then muscle, then skin, and so it's like it was just
with nipples and
exactly
and a navel.
Yeah, it's funny stuff, but yeah, that is how it was depicted in that movie. Yeah, how many design events were there? How exactly does he do it? Well, he just did it.
Or have you actually seen that the Adam had a navel, or did they cleverly put it out? So Adam didn't have a navel, because a navel is of course proof that you are born of a placenta. Yeah.
I did not even notice that.
Maybe it would be pretty funny to see that. Oh, they missed that tiny detail. Damn it.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. Having nipples also. Yeah, I just remember I've seen a few of the different older paintings of Garden of Eden, and it's like the serpent is always depicted as a female.
Yeah,
interesting stuff.
It's also basically they will say that the males were first, and then females developed from males later. But why do males have nipples? And why do all of us basically develop as females first, and then we develop or some of us develop into males? The male anatomy basically stems from the female anatomy, sort of.
Right. I mean, males we're just so much more important. We had to, we just had to, come first because we're all self-important. So,
yeah. So I created this man with a penis. And I have forgotten something. What was it? Oh yes, something to put the penis into. Oh shit.
Yeah. My goodness. Yeah, that is really funny. Yeah, I mean, because the second one, well, the first
story of Genesis is not that. It's the second one that basically says.
Well,
first Adam was created, and then he had to name all the animals, and then Adam was lonely. He couldn't have sex with anything, so basically, God, can you give me a booty call, please?
Yeah, that's right. I just think that's so funny, because it's like, did he? was he doing it with like the apes, with other apes prior to that, and then was like, this isn't working out for me? Makes you wonder.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Yes, exactly. I couldn't find a very suitable companion. Trust me, I have tried, but it didn't work. The Christians will be very upset about that joke. So I did not. I don't want to apply that. Adam was into bestiality. It was just a joke.
Yeah, it's that is pretty funny. It's something they try not to think about. What is it? RJ says that Tortukans they don't want to think about what they don't want to think about, or whatever it is. Yeah, or they don't think about what they don't want to think about. I just think that's funny stuff. Questions for future. Questions for the future.
What is the reference from?
Do what?
The line like you don't want to think about what you want to think about.
Well, he got it from the movie Inherit the Wind, where the guy who plays Clarence Darrow asks William Jennings Bryan because William Jennings Bryan is called to the stand, and Darrow asks him, he's asking him questions, and Bryan says, "I don't think about it," and Clarence says or Darrow says, "Do you think about?" He's like, "Do you think about the things you don't think about?" And Bryan says, "No, I don't."
I remember that scene. Yes.
He's like, "No, I try not to," or whatever. And so, and so it.
Yeah, our creators will also complain about that movie too, and they are right. It was a bit propaganda film.
Yes, it was.
Yes, but we don't argue that big on basis of that movie. I mean, it would be pretty stupid to argue based on that movie, like make an argument.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would definitely agree. It's totally the video. Well, even news stories about it misrepresent.
The many facts are distorted in that movie.
Yeah, it's totally misrepresented. It was not. I mean, the whole basis for it was totally misrepresented. It was not about this innocent little school teacher who was picked up by the big bad government because he was teaching evolution. The ACLU set him up in the same way that Homer Plessy was set up to tackle race laws, because the ACLU wanted to challenge these. They wanted to challenge these laws, so they have their fall guy. It's like he's going to take the heat for going against this law, but we're going to do it in such a way that we're going to force the government to question how this law is implemented. Yeah. And so yeah, that was the whole point of it. He knew the whole time what he was doing, and I think there are interviews with him after where he says, I'm not even sure if I actually did teach any evolution, but oh yeah, it was an interesting movie. I mean, I definitely appreciate the history of it, and it was a big win for evolutionists, as all court cases pretty much have been in that regard since then, which is why creationism was reformed into intelligent design in the first place. Because
they did won the case, but it was basically a failure in the long term, because because it showed how stupid creationism really was.
And, yeah. Even the people who were creationists were like, "Wow." And then, I mean, intelligent design was a spawn of creationism because they were losing. Yeah. Creation was just constantly losing at every level, and so they developed this clandestine creationism to kind of get it back in there, which was challenged Dover and all these other court cases since then. But yeah.
First, it was basically evolution should not be taught, but then later it became taught that the law against evolution was lifted, and then they argue, okay, evolution can be taught, but we have to teach creationism too. But no, it would also violate the First Amendment, and then they argue, all right, then let's change creationism into intelligent design, and maybe that will help.
Yeah, we in Louisiana we still have laws on the books that allow the teaching of intelligent design alongside evolution.
No.
In 2008 was like the biggest one, or I guess maybe one of the biggest ones passed, which is the Louisiana Science Education Act. Basically says, it's like, it allows, it has the door open to such teachings, and that's why we had Zach Coplin, who campaigned against that kind of stuff back then to get it overturned, which unfortunately it's still on the books, believe it or not, still today, to this very day.
They try to create any loophole they want or they can, such as so they instead of they want to pass a law. They, as the tweets, they may teach this. It's not mandatory, but if the teacher wants to include this in the class, they are allowed to teach in the class. And of course, when they have that, they will promote teachers to do it and to do it mandatorily in circles, and then they are allowed. Basically, it becomes basically mandatory eventually, because except for the teachers that then don't want to teach it, but of course, many teachers in your country, I think, are creationists and they are very willing to teach intelligent design, even though it's not part of the class material.
Oh yeah. A horrifying number of teachers are creationists or intelligent designers.
Did you have one in your class?
Fortunately, I have never. My girlfriend did, but I in elementary school, but I have never. Fortunately, we didn't learn about evolution in elementary school. In middle school, we kind of touched on it a little bit, and then in high school, I had a really good biology teacher. I liked her a lot. She was very good teacher. And so, of course, in college, it's not going to happen in college unless you go to like Prager University or Liberty University or whatever.
I've been ignoring the chat for a long time now, and I see many have, or a few actually, have put some questions in. Some of them are jokes, like does DNA degrade in water?
Oh yeah, that was Steve McRae was like irate about that, wasn't he?
it was again through empiricism. He
crap.
I wasn't part of that discussion at the time, but it was so often brought up again and again that I just eventually became part of that. Basically, first through says that the DNA degrades in water. And when DNA touches the water, it basically loses its sequence, like that. And then it becomes dissolved in water, which is not the same thing. Or basically, first, True wants to assert that I claimed degrading because somebody says it dissolves, but those two are not the same thing. I think I'm not very good at reciting what he actually said, but if you basically can ask Steve, and he will very eagerly explain what happened with true empiricism.
Oh yeah, I saw the comments and it looked ridiculous. Oh my goodness, it looked funny.
Yeah,
kind of like bashing your head against a wall is funny, but
he I think one time he cited a video of somebody explaining how sugar dissolves in water.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and he heard that the sugar breaks up into its individual molecules, and he translates that into the DNA. That DNA breaks up into its individual parts, not molecules, but the part that it's made of, like the monomers, I think.
Yeah. Oh boy.
It's and he has claimed that he has never been corrected on anything. Not even that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I believe it. Yeah, I have seen very little of his stuff. But from what I have seen, I'm not surprised. Not impressed with his work. So, but that's just me. That's just my opinion.
All right. Yeah. Somebody else asked, how much money did Paradise Lost make? I don't know.
A lot.
I hope not as much as they would like to have had made.
They made, I think they, well, okay. I say a lot, but by their standards, what qualifies as a lot for creationists, for like a creationist movie, is not like a lot, is not definitely not by any measure a lot compared to normal movies. Like, you think of like what did uh like the first Avengers movie, you know, made like billions, I think.
Yes.
It would this because it was just it was incredible. It was incredible movie. This is Genesis or sorry Genesis Paradise Lost. I think made like maybe a few million. When I say a few, I mean fewer than 10. So it's not by any stretch of the imagination a lot of money in as far as movies are concerned.
I will try to look it up. I mean, maybe it's somewhere. Genesis.
Yeah, they but two creationist movies, it's a good bit of money. So yeah.
I see on Rotten Tomatoes, it's not the critics have not assessed it, but 92% of the audience liked it. 92, yes,
I was part of that 8%.
Not 19, but 90.
Yeah.
Close to 100.
You said 92% liked it?
Yes, 90. Yeah, so sorry, I am Dutch. I can't pronounce pronounce the difference between 19 and 90.
Yeah, no, we my girlfriend and I were part of that small percent that was stifling giggles the whole time. Actually, I slapped my forehead at one point, or face palmed.
And the Graces go, hey, what was that?
Well, we were sitting next to a family. It was on my left, and the woman who was closest to me, I think she was just like 1 or 2 seats down from me, like looked over at me. I couldn't tell she was glaring, but it was when they said Lucy was a chimp.
Like the face of the lady. Must be a Democrat.
Actually, that does actually remind me of a guy recently who was like talking to RJ. He said, "You're not answering any of my questions," and I was looking at the thread and I said, "Okay, why don't you tell me what the question is that you want RJ to answer, and I will get him to answer it." And he said, I think he called me like, he said, "Oh, you're just another dirty liberal," and then blocked me. And I was like, I was literally trying to help you here. I was like, I was on your side. I want to hear that question and get the answer. But no, he just called me a liberal and hung up on me. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, all right, that's. I guess it's easier for him to hate somebody if he perceives that they disagree with him politically.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know. We never discuss politics. I don't discuss politics, but I was like, whatever, okay. But yeah, I mean, I think the movie made enough. I think it made enough money that they were pretty happy with the result. I don't even know how much Genesis Paradise Lost made, or not Genesis Paradise Lost.
I see here Box Office Mojo. It made a total amount of 1.575 million.
Okay. Yeah. See, I figured it was fewer than 10.
Let's see. I can screen share. Is it allowed? I think it's allowed to screen share it. It's not copyrighted.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow. All right. Okay, 1 million.
No,
yeah.
I don't know if it's accurate. I don't often go to these websites, but
no, I think that sounds right. I do believe that's what Paul said.
Are there any costs? Let me see here. How much money did it go into at first? Like, is there a net winst, or is there a net gain of money?
Oh, yeah. I don't know how much they themselves made off of it. How much of it went to Fathom? I don't know. That's an interesting question, though. Oh, does that say gross today?
Gross. So
they made
my yes. I'm sorry.
Just over 1 million.
Yes.
They made just over 1 million from it. Okay, not bad. Yeah, that's not bad.
For a movie like that, it's not bad. No.
Yeah. Savannah and I saw Strike told me about a movie that came out just recently titled Alien Intrusion. Have you heard about it?
No.
It is a movie about how alien abductions aren't alien abductions. They're actually demons.
Oh my god.
It was put out by Creation.
Actually, I think Nephilim 3 believes something like that. They believes that the aliens are demons.
Yeah. We what was it? So yeah, the night before it came out, Strike messaged me and says, "Jackson, you're going to see this." And I looked at it and I said, "Well, Savannah and I are now." And so we did, and we actually, when we looked at the seating, because I don't know how it is in the Netherlands, but in movie theaters increasingly now, you have to like buy your seat you just have to reserve your seat now as opposed to just buying a ticket. And so it's a fairly new thing with our theater.
We have the system now too also.
Okay,
Usually if you are like just plain there to at the counter buying a ticket, you will be automatically assigned a seat.
Yeah, it used to be.
But you also have the option to reserve a seat at home on the internet.
Oh,
yes,
really?
Yes,
that's pretty neat. That I wish we had that. But yeah, it used to be just buy a ticket, go in, sit wherever the heck you want. But I guess people were upset that they'd end up sitting on the front row or whatever, and you'd have to look up at the screen. And so now you reserve your seats beforehand. So we looked at
we can basically print or basically buy a ticket online and print the barcode, and you can just go in, let the barcode be scanned, and you can just walk in right there and then.
Yeah.
And I've also seen some people using just their smartphones to scan their barcodes.
That's what I do. Yeah. I only use my smartphone now. I don't even print out an actual ticket. I buy it, send the email, and then pull it up my phone, just walk in. But we looked at the number of seats in the movie, and a total of 9. Was it 9 people? Including us. A total of 9 people in the whole theater. That's it. 9 people had bought tickets, and only 7, including us, showed up. The 2 of us, so only 5 other people were there.
Oh, I recently went to a movie I really wasn't particularly excited about. It's called Jumanji. Have you heard of it?
I actually saw that yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, I was really surprised. It's also a funny movie. I think not masterful or a very Avengers level, something like that. But it was a lot more than I expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the room was basically full when we were there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the original Jumanji, and I thought it was decent. I thought the new one was decent.
I have the original movie on my PlayStation Portable.
I like it because it's got Robin Williams in it. I really like Robin Williams.
Yeah, it doesn't have a very high score on Rotten Tomatoes though, but I still think it has a heart to it, to the story, like with Robin Williams and such.
Yeah. Oh well. That's movies, I guess. I'm not a film critic. I tend to like most things that I go see, but but yeah, the alien abduction movie that was a hoot. It was 2 hours of a movie they could have made in 20 minutes. Seriously, like no joke. The whole movie could have been done in 20 minutes, and it was 2 hours.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm not a movie critic too, but today usually I think, let's see first how good it scores, and then if it scores good, and then I will usually pick the better one over the one that scores less good, basically. But usually when I see a movie, even though it's a bad one, I usually enjoy it. That's basically I'm not the greatest. So there's one movie I really hate, and I regret to have watched it. And it's called the Dragon Ball Evolution. Have you ever heard of it? Are you not familiar with the manga?
No, I don't watch any of that.
Um,
I don't watch that either. But
so they made a live action movie out of it, and it was just terrible.
that's
like,
funny.
Have you watched the last Airbender?
Unfortunately.
The animated series also.
Oh, I love the animated series.
Yes,
The movie was absolute trash.
But in the case of the last Airbender, I have accepted the warnings and I've never watched it. Never.
It's basically season 1 of the last Airbender, or sorry, exactly. Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's it. It's just season 1.
Yeah, and whenever it is put on TV, like just I don't know how it's called, just an old movie that is suddenly being screened on a channel. You know, right? And whenever one of my parents just zaps through it, and occasionally a scene pops up of that movie, I go, no, go further, go, don't stay, please.
Oh yeah, it was just not good at. I mean, they called Aang Ong, which was one of the weird freaking things. It's like Ong. What?
I think they did it on purpose to make it new or something, just to make it different. I don't know. It's very poor choices.
I mean, I
don't think they could have made it good anyway, because it's a long story, and you cannot make such a long story compressed in just a few hours.
Yeah, each season was like a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, and also there were all these different storylines going on. There was no way you could just compress it into a movie. It was way too much. I mean, I know they try to do that crap all the time, but you just can't do it. Yeah, I mean, M. Night Shyamalan movies in general are usually crap. There are a few exceptions, like what is The Sixth Sense. But in general, like there was one I watched called The Village.
Lady in the Water.
Oh, that was another crap one. The Village.
I have seen this movie also a very long time ago. It was again just on television. I had nothing to do, and I was just like, "What the hell is this?" Well, is this an amateur movie or something? Like just a few guys made on campus or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, see, he made one movie which I think was a really neat concept. It was just executed poorly. The movie was The Village. It's basically like you have this group of people living out in the woods in this little village. It's like wooden huts and all this. They're like the video makes you think it's like the 1800s or something.
I know. Yes.
Yeah,
I've seen this, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
and of course, what a twist! It turns out to be the modern day, of course.
Yeah, but I just think it could have been done so much better had someone else done it. Like, had Steven Spielberg done it, it would have been a really cool movie, I think. Yeah. But M. Night Shyamalan didn't, so it was crap.
Yeah.
It was a neat concept, though.
But the difference is between like all these other bad movies and in my case with Dragon Ball Evolution, I've been a fan of Dragon Ball for a long time, and I was genuinely excited to see a live action movie. Of course, I had no idea that most of the live action movies were quite bad, but I just went, "Oh, cool, a live action movie based on Dragon Ball." So I went in and like, oh no. No.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny when people make like cartoons of a live action movie. I think that's always weird. Or stuff like, well, it's usually for like, younger movies, but they did it for Star Wars, and I think it was executed excellently. They did with all the prequels, and then they made the Clone Wars TV show. Well, both of them, they made 2 Clone Wars TV shows.
Yeah.
And the shows were awesome. And then they made Rebels, which it's okay. It's all right. It's not as
I've seen some clips. I'm of course a Star Wars fan too. based on
Yeah.
my icon. pretty
Yeah.
pretty obvious. But I'm not following the series much at all. I've seen some scenes, like I think between Darth Vader and his ex-student.
Oh, Ahsoka. Yeah,
Ahsoka, yes, and it
that was from Rebels.
it was awesome that scene. It was put on YouTube.
Yeah, that there are like 3 different versions of that scene on YouTube. I think each one has like at least 5 million views. It's crazy.
Yeah.
People love that scene because that's from Rebels. That's from end of season 3 of Rebels, or no, season 2, I think it was. Yeah, I think season 2. But oh yeah, it was great. It was one of their best episodes, but also like most people died in that episode. Like they killed off like all the villains they'd been dealing with for the past season. Darth Maul came back. Darth Vader showed up. Ahsoka disappeared. She should be returning in season 4. But yeah, like I said, Rebels is okay. It's got some episodes that are really cool. Like they had Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul in one of their episodes.
Although it didn't last long, unfortunately.
I have to say I'm kind of glad it didn't. I really appreciated the way that they did the episode, though. I thought it was really neat. Or the way they did the fight, because he basically tricks Darth Maul and then just kills him. And so I thought, wow, that was really cool. And then Darth Maul has this like lucid moment as he's dying, and it was just it almost makes you feel bad for him.
I think they did from basis of what I've seen about the Rebels, how they brought back Darth Maul. I think they did a pretty good job making his character more complex than they did in the Menace.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. The Clone Wars. He came back in the Clone Wars TV show.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And he went on, or like his brother found him, and then they did all this crazy stuff together. And he's a very good character, or he was a very good character. He went through a whole evolution in the Clone Wars show and then in Rebels. So yeah, his arc.
It also shows that it's not just like the light side and the dark side. It's a bit of gray areas between. And I think that the Darth Maul shows that, because he's not exactly on the dark side anymore. But he's still not on the light side also.
Yeah, the Clone Wars TV show definitely makes you reconsider the concept of good versus evil, because you see there's actually a whole episode titled Heroes on Both Sides, which is a reference to the intro to Revenge of the Sith. Which it's like Padme goes to this separatist planet and talks with one of the senators who also wants war to end. So you see that there are good people in both areas. You also see that you see occasionally like the clones can do horrible crap to people, just like the droids can do horrible crap to people. It really depends, and I do appreciate that there's less of a you're expected to like these guys, you're expected to hate these guys.
Yes,
I appreciate that gray area.
It makes everything more complex and more interesting.
Exactly, it does. Yeah.
But we have been a bit gone off a tangent. Sorry about that, but
tangent. What?
On a tangent, we have gone off on a tangent.
No, yeah, it's like, we're way out there now.
But still, it's pretty entertaining to talk about this. Let's go back. We were talking about Paradise Lost, and it made a net profit of 1.5 million.
Well, they made a net profit of like 1.06 million.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes. So not bad for them. Not great or not good as far as movies go, but not bad for a creationist movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the expectations were, but still.
Well, I mean, they only expected to put out enough tickets for one night, and so they were surprised to get as many ticket sales as they did, which allowed them to put out for a second night. So I think they were pleasantly surprised by the outcome.
I think many, maybe not more than half. I think pretty much like 15% or something. I guess, were skeptics that just wanted to see a good laugh or something like that. Just to see how awful this movie was, or something like that.
He saw it also. He said he took a little video of part of it, and he said he kept hearing this sound in his recording. He eventually realized it was him sighing. Like every time they would make a terrible argument, he'd go, "Ah," and that would be on the recorder. He said, "Yeah." He's like, I kept hearing this sound, and I didn't know what it was. Eventually, I figured it out.
Oh my god! It would be funny to just sit beside him and look him in his face like, oh my god, no, please. That's not how it goes. It's not, no.
What's really, what I thought was also kind of funny is that there weren't just creationists in there. There was a mom, or Savannah says there was a mom on her right side who kind of disagreed with some of the stuff, but then at the altar call at the end, she was like, "Yep, praise Jesus." And so it was very interesting that even among Christians, non-creationists went to see this.
Yeah.
My parents have never, or my parents, my grandparents have never expressed interest to like go see movies like that. But I just found it interesting that such a menagerie of different denominations went and saw it.
Yeah, it's similar to how many of their visitors at the Ark Encounter are also skeptics and such.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Like when it opened, there were many like R&R visits when it opened, and I think PJ Myers did too when it first opened.
He actually upset Ken Ham. They evidently have a finger to the pulse because they saw his blog post and they talked about it. Paul did a video on it. Which I thought was really funny. It's like they have people who go through all the top blogs like Hemant Meta and PZ, and they see this stuff and they report back, "Hey, check out this article that such and such wrote," which I think that's really funny. That they're reading the stuff we put out, which I mean I guess is kind of prudent, but I don't know. That's just me. Matt Dillahunty and Seth Andrews also went a few months back and took a picture by the big snake plaque, whatever. I have not
which says if I can convince you that the flood never happened, then I can convince you that heaven or hell or something like that are not real either, or something like that. And Aram made a very amusing point. Like if you lower the standard this far, then you made my job much easier.
Yeah, definitely. I have never been there. I've never even been close to it. I'm not even sure if I've ever even been to. Have I been to Kentucky? I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But I guess that's. I don't know. I'm I guess as of right now ambivalent towards going because I mean I don't really want to give Ken Ham my money, but at the same time, if I had a chance to see it, maybe I would go. Maybe. I've been to creationist museums before. I mean, I'm in Louisiana, but I don't know. I don't know if I would go.
I'm not sure either. One part of me says, "Oh, I want to see how awful it is." Like this morbid, out of morbid curiosity. And one part of me says, "No, I really don't want to put money into this." Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of in the same position. Do we really want to give him our dollars?
Yeah. I mean, if it was for free, maybe we want to.
Oh yeah,
we want to be masochistic enough to put ourselves in that situation.
Well, I think it's really funny. All the Paul's coverage of it has been phenomenal because you see it's not it's not necessarily failing. It's that they're they're just not doing well. They did not get anywhere near the revenue or the people from it that they expected they would get. They weaseled their way out of taxes.
Yeah, it was so
benefit the
bad. It
surrounding
was so
area.
bad that Ken Ham had to sell the Ark counter to himself for $10 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It was it. I mean, good lord, the crap they've pulled is absurd. Just so they can get out of paying a 50-cent tax that would benefit the surrounding area. And John Oliver did a piece where he briefly looked at the Ark and what?
I want to make a joke about the tax dollars would go to the surrounding area. I want to say, well, that's just communism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, John Oliver did a quick look at it, and I think it's the mayor of is it Williamsburg? I think is the city that it's in. And if you look at the downtown area, it's like it never changed. Still, people are not like visiting it. They're not going en masse. They're pretty much just going to the Ark Park and not going to the city. You know, it's
so nobody stays in like hotels there or something.
No, yeah, they're not staying. They're not, dining in the city, what have you. For the most part, they're just going to the park and leaving.
From where did the tax dollars go to building this Ark? From the community as well, or not?
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, a very poor investment they have made.
What a surprise, right?
Yeah, surprise.
I mean, the people take pictures of the parking lot and they're like, there are no cars here. I mean, relatively speaking, it's a gigantic parking lot, but then they have to bus you over to the park itself, and which is just weird. I mean, I think that's really weird. I guess that's what they do at. No, I guess at Disney you still can park. You can choose to ride the bus, but you can still park at Disney. So I guess it's just really weird. I don't know. Maybe they don't want people to take pictures of like an empty parking lot right in front of the park. They want to at least have the illusion that there are people coming.
So they spread out the cars.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, I really can't feel bad for. I can't bring myself to feel bad for Williamsburg. They gave money, or they gave land to the Ark Park that would have been like millions and millions more usually, but they sold it to the Ark Park for like $6 million, as opposed to what it would actually go for. And so it's like, I really can't bring myself to feel bad for them. Yeah, they kind of did it to themselves, but oh well. Poor dears. What is it? Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. God can make rainbows happen. God can make a world where floods happen, but somehow he just can't handle money.
Well, that's why you got to preach that prosperity gospel. But anyways,
so I had one last point that G-Man made in his video.
Okay.
It was about the descent from Darwinism.
Descent from. Oh, right, yeah. That thing, the petition, right? Yeah.
So basically, he says that look, here's a list of scientists that do not agree with evolution. And that's basically the whole argument that he makes. Oh, look, here's scientists that are against evolution.
Yeah. What is it? Is it the Skeptic? No, Rational Wiki.
Yeah.
Rational Wiki actually has an article where they look at every single person who's on the list, and they write out like the credentials of the person, what the person does for a living. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then there was Project Steve. I think anyone who brings that up, you have to bring up Project Steve immediately. Like, excuse me. Yeah, they only got. It was just
that's the best point that you can make. Let's just assume that every person on it is a qualified scientist in biology on evolution.
Right.
And let's just assume that they all agree. They all just disagree with the theory of evolution. But of course, we know some of them do not disagree.
Right. Yeah.
For example, Michael Behe does not disagree with common ancestry, and there are also some on the list that want their names to be removed because their views are distorted by that statement. But of course, let's just assume they all disagree with evolution. They are a real creationists. Just go flat out there. What does it tell us? Like I don't know how many there are. Like 1,000, maybe 1,000 scientists. They make up only a fraction of the total scientists that are out there. It's negligible.
Oh yeah, it's and of the scientists, the biologists are like at tiny fraction of that.
Yeah,
because most of them are like physicists or what is it, like mathematicians or chemists or something like that. Something that's like, okay, you don't have the authority in this area, so why do I care about your opinion?
Yeah, there was one guy named Don Exodus. I don't know.
Yeah, Don Exodus. Yeah.
He made a very amusing point. Like, if you have done a bachelor degree in like computer technology, but you after your education you have been hired by Pornhub to do basically update the website now often. You are qualified enough to be on that list. That's how low the standard is to be on that list.
Jesus. Oh my gosh, I'm honestly not surprised. I didn't know it was that low, but I am not surprised. Yeah, I mean, they have all these people like dentists and surgeons, and I think even park rangers are on there.
Oh yes. Oh my god. This was somebody who also made that park rangers are on there somehow.
Yeah, it just. Oh my goodness! And then Don Exodus, back when the list was younger, he like emailed all.
I think 600 or something. I don't know. Maybe even less.
He emailed all the biologists on there, like all the people who were actual biologists. He emailed each of them and asked if they agreed with what the paper said. And I think R and Rob made the point that, had he not been told it was by the Discovery Institute, he himself would have signed it.
Yeah. Me too. Let me pull up the statement. Let me see here.
Yeah, it's like, just treat evolution with skepticism or something like that. It's like, okay, that's all of science.
Yeah.
Treat all science with skepticism.
Let me see here. I have this. This is from the Discovery. It is sent from Darwin.com itself. And it says here, we are skeptical of claims for the ability of random mutations and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwinian theory should be encouraged. Well, the second line is basically scientific skepticism, which is universal, even among the people who agree with the evolution theory. So it doesn't. If you agree with the second line, it doesn't mean you disagree with evolution. It just means, yeah, sure, we should be skeptical about the evidence and carefully examine the evidence for the theory. Of course, it's the same counts for the first line too. We are skeptical.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. This is just normal, healthy skepticism. This isn't denial. Yeah. This is pretty mild-mannered stuff. But then
it also ignores many of the mechanisms that we also have added to the theory, like genetic drift and
gene flow, all that jazz.
etc. Yes. So even if I disagreed with that, of course, random mutation and natural selection does not account for the complexity of life. Even if I would agree with that, it does not agree. I disagree with the theory today, but that we now have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just it seems pretty innocuous until you realize what organization is putting it out. Then you realize, oh, hey, there's a a game going on here. There are, there's this clandestine message within it that it's not just about encouraging a careful examination of the evidence for evolution, just like any other theory. It's about flat denial of evolution, which is really what they're about. And so, yeah, it's just a mess. It's just a mess. But yeah, some people want to be taken off the list. Some people are dead and they're still on the list. It's just all this crazy stuff. And then I think RJ was looking at it, and he says the names on the list aren't being added to either the beginning of the list or the end of the list. They're like sprinkled somewhere in the middle.
So new names are added in the middle or something.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's like they're not adding them to the front or the back. It's like they're in the middle, kind of, from what he says.
Oh, hold on a moment. I want to have a drink now because my mouth is very dry.
Okay, all right.
Hold up.
Let me distract all of you with my juggling skills.
All right, I'm back. Oh. I guess that Jackson Wade is also getting a drink. So yeah, the descent from Darwinism. There's so much wrong with it. Not all scientists who are on there are even qualified to in the field of evolutionary biology, and not all of them actually disagree with the modern. Oh, sorry, I was just filling in. Space. Just to finish my sentence, and not all of them disagree with the actual theory that we have now.
Yeah. There's Arnaud did a video where he went to the Texas Board of Education and talked to them. And one of the guys who came up before him was reading a paper written by James Tour, who's a chemist. He's a creationist chemist. And he has this whole argument that no one knows how macroevolution works, even though his whole argument is no one knows how it works because basically I don't know how it works. And he says, I talked to a biophysicist who I'm not going to name. And he
biophysicist?
Yeah.
Is there actually such a thing?
Yeah.
I've never heard of about biophysicist.
Yeah, biophysics is a thing. But he says he's like, I talked to a biophysicist and he doesn't know how it works, even though he won't name the biophysicist. And he's like, well, that's all of it. That's my whole argument. I talked to some people. They don't know. They claim to not know how it works, even though I won't tell you who they are. But it's like, okay. So if I just said I talked to some people and they told me they do know how it works, that's argument that it does work. It's like, okay, that's your argument. All right. No actual data here. Just I know a guy. I have sources. Trust me, I have sources. I'm not going to tell you my sources, but I have them. Oh man, but yeah, James Tour's little article about how no one understands macroevolution's been making the rounds on the internet, and I keep running into it, and it's stupid. It's very stupid, just like the descent from Darwinism. Look at these people who claim to not believe evolution. Isn't that argument? No. If 90% of people believe that the Earth was flat, that doesn't make the Earth flat. That it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think.
Yeah.
Literally makes no difference as to the facts. But someone asked, did the conversation ever migrate to GMOs?
Oh yeah, I was planning on going to there after we have finished this question, because there was the descent from Darwinism was the last point that G-Man made in the video. So we have basically addressed the entire video. Maybe we can go into evolution more, but I think now we have talked about evolution for more than 3 hours. So maybe it's a good idea to go into GMOs too. Have you have a stance on GMOs?
Yes, I actually made a video on GMOs.
Oh yeah, I remember now. It was a very good video.
I made a video on GMOs a little while back at the behest of what's his name? He's got a rooster as his icon. Crap, I can't remember his name. Dang it. Anyways, he asked me to make a video on it, and so I thought about doing that, as well as I did that kind of in conjunction with a video on like crank medical practices. So I was like, for once I'm going to do something that's less arcane and focuses more on pertinent issues. And so I did a video on GMOs, and a video is titled "GMOs Aren't Harmful." And so I look at how GMOs, or what GMOs have been historically versus what are GMOs today. How do we make GMOs? What are the benefits of GMOs? And so so my stance is that, I mean, we are using them already. It's basically, even organic foods are GMOs. You can't get away from GMOs unless you go out and live in the woods, basically, and eat twigs and leaves. But GMOs are good. They are good. I mean, we get more yield from. We get more yield. We don't have to slash and burn more hectares of forestry, so that we can make more land for crops, which is basically what you have to do after a while, because you use up all the nutrients in the soil. But I mean, the unfortunate part of it is, I think that the organic industry has been so efficient in breeding fear towards GMOs.
Yes.
They've been so efficient in it that, like, someone hears the word GMO, they're like, they blanch.
It gets so very how do you say it, very ingrained in people's mind, that we get people like on TV, like when somebody comes up to random people on the street. Have you ever heard about GMOs? I've heard about GMOs. Okay, what are they? And then say, GMO is, I don't know, but I know it's bad. I know it's bad. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Almost literally. Almost.
Yeah. My introduction to GMOs was kind of around the same time I first started getting into creationism, which was back in 2014. Because Bill Nye had his debate with Ken Ham, and so later that year, that was in February, later that year, Bill Nye came out with a book titled Undeniable. And so he writes a few chapters, I think, about GMOs. And so I read that, and I was like, okay, GMOs aren't that bad. Or aren't. From that, I was like, okay, GMOs aren't bad. And, but in the media, it makes it sound like GMOs are the worst thing on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, we're choosing to eat poison, basically. Like we're consciously making the decision to ingest like cancerous chemicals and things like that. It's like, do you eat fruit or vegetables? That is a GMO. You really can't get away from it. Even if you're an organic person, you're still not getting away from it. You're dealing with fewer GMO crops, but you're still not getting away from it. You really can't get away from it unless you, like I said, you move out into the forest.
And there's an other point that's often been made against people against GMOs. Like, for example, of course, pretty much all of our food is in some way altered and mutated from the ancestral form. So basically, in a sense, they are GMOs, in the sense that they are different from their ancestors. But
Right.
but of course, they will then say the anti-GMO people will then say, but it's not the same as the actual GMOs. The GMOs
I mean, hey,
that we are
dogs are
making, the
GMOs.
GMOs that we have today have genes from fish and genes from bacteria that do not occur at all
Right.
in all the other foods that we have.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you could say, hey, dogs are GMOs.
Yeah.
Through a different means, but yeah, I mean, you use things.
They do have one point that the GMOs that we label as GMOs are not exactly the same as the techniques that we use in the other examples, like dogs. They are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
artificial selection. It's direct
Yes.
engineering of the genes. I mean, you use things like lentiviruses and crap. What is the lentiviruses are for animals because you gotta basically you have to have a medium by which you can imprint the genes from whatever organism it is onto using a reverse transcriptase.
Like a vector.
Yeah, you have to have a vector
Yeah.
who can transmit the genes to your crop or your animal, whatever. Yeah, lentiviruses are for animals. I can't remember what it is for plants. I know I say it in the video, but I forgot.
In plants, I think the most used vector is the agrobacterium.
Yes, agrobacterium. Yep, there you go. Yeah. I mean, heck, we even have genetically, which is why I argue in my video. I say we should use genetically engineered. I think as the term for like
Yes.
plants and things like glowfish, because we're directly altering, genetically engineering these things. We're not like selectively breeding.
Let's change the acronym to GEO.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think when I hear genetically modified, maybe I'm just being pedantic, but I think you should point out, hey, there are lots of things that are genetically modified. Heck, we're genetically modified. Viruses or bacteria and viruses were the first genetic modifiers. They've been doing it billions of years before we got along.
Our genome is constantly changing from generation to generation. So, how do you identify what changes are due to quote unquote natural effects versus engineered ones? And it really isn't an objective or an intrinsic difference because it's like synthetic versus natural chemical.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you found a water molecule in nature and you made a synthetic water molecule in the lab by burning hydrogen with oxygen, there are no differences between the two molecules, even though one is natural and one is synthetic, according to our categories that we have constructed.
Right. I mean, like using like E. coli to make insulin. Yeah. I mean, no one's arguing against, or I mean, there might be some people.
There actually are people who argue against.
Okay, but I think the vast majority of diabetics would say yes, it's a good idea to use E. coli to make insulin. In the same way that I think a lot of people would say yes, it's a good idea to use organisms to make acetate, so like as nail polish remover and stuff like that. It's I mean, I believe that I definitely believe there are people out there who argue against it, but I think most people are thankful to bacteria, for being alive,
Yeah. So some people have this very strange notion of natural versus synthetic. Like synthetic is bad and natural is good, even though it doesn't tell you much about the chemical in question. For example, set aside the water example, like the natural water and the synthetic water is pretty much the same. And there is another more practical example of aspirin, like natural aspirin found in the bark of willow trees versus the synthetic ones that we make. And the synthetic ones is slightly different than the aspirin found in willow bark, but it is actually safer because it has less side effect than the ones found in willow bark.
Yeah, it's also more concentrated.
So in that case, synthetic is better than the natural.
Oh, I mean, yeah, with plants like corn, for instance, the corn that you buy at the grocery store does not exist in nature. The corn that you find in nature is called is for anyone who doesn't know, it's called teosint. It's this little not very nutritious plant.
It's basically grass.
It's basically a type of grass. Same with the ancestor of broccoli and kale and kohlrabi and asparagus. They all come from and gailon. They all come from the same mustard weed.
I don't think is asparagus the same genus.
Asparagus might not be. I might be wrong on that. But as for the rest, broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, cauliflower, they all come from the cabbage. They're all the same.
The brassica genus.
Yes, yeah, they're all this little mustard weed, which again is not very nutritious. But we have, we've cultured it over the years of the generations, and so it's now we have all these plants that are nutritious.
It will be fun. It will be fun to have like a mustard plant in one. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No. You're right. Keep going.
It would be fun to have like a mustard plant in one hand and a broccoli in the other hand, and ask a creationist, are these the same kind?
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I like that. I'll probably use that sometime in the future. Are these the same kind? Well, because they're very. I guess because creationists, baraminologists especially, don't like genetics. They really don't like genetics, which is ironic because creationists are always boasting how genetics, is the best argument for creationism, and yet they avoid it like the plague.
Yeah.
When they
do baram. Oh, sorry. I often interrupt you. Sorry.
No. I was done.
I often where was I going? When they often do actual baraminology, like Todd Wood, they don't use genetics. They use morphology or fossil evidence. But if you have the genetics, why don't you use the genetics to identify your kinds?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is when you do that, I have made one post on G+ about comparing our genomic structures, our chromosomes with chimps, and comparing that comparison with the genomes of rats and mice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And guess what? There are more differences between rats and mice than there are between humans and chimps. Based on the genome alone. I can show you the picture.
Rats and mice, they're both in Muridae, and so they're all over the world. So I can imagine there would be lots of differences between, or quite a few differences between those guys. But you also look at like bacteria, because you have what is a species, to a bacteria or bacterium, because they're not they're not sexually producing. You can't. And so you have to use like ribosomal RNA to figure out, okay, this guy is more closely related to this guy. And you form these trees of archaeans and bacteria using their rRNA. And so, which I think is very interesting. Oh, wow.
Let's see here. Go down. And here's my comparison. But basically, the top graph is like the human chromosome colored based on the chimp chromosome. Like, for example, maybe I can zoom in. Let's see here. Or maybe I can click. Maybe that is better. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes. You can see here the chromosome colored based on the complementary chromosome. Like, for example, the chromosome 1 of chimps correspond with chromosome 1 of humans, and the same goes for the rats and the mice. But in below, you have an easier overview of it. Like, if this line corresponds with chromosome 3 of humans and chromosome 3 of chimps. So it's basically straightforward. And here you have your chromosome 1 and chromosome 1 of humans and chimps. And here, of course, you have chromosome 2 of humans corresponding to chromosome 2b and 2a of chimps.
Wow.
Can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Wow,
right. That's really cool.
And so basically, if humans and chimpanzees were 100% identical, it would be a straight line.
Right.
There are some. It's mostly a straight line, but there are some inversions, like the genome is flipped, the part of the genome.
Okay.
Inversions, and here it is a fusion. But when you compare this with the rats and the mice, you see a lot more changes and breakups. Like it's here's pretty much a straight line, but you have here a fused chromosome perhaps, or maybe a split chromosome, I don't know. And you have all these small breakups. And this is partly because the rats and mice are more distantly related to each other than humans are to chimps. So how would a creationist respond to this data? Basically, they couldn't have a response to it. If they accept that the rats and the mice are the same kind, and some of them do, they have no excuse to not accept humans and chimpanzees as the same kind.
Right. Yes. Right. Very true.
Yes. But we are going back to evolution now. Let's go back to GMOs. So.
Yeah. So that is I think that was a summary of my position on GMOs. Is that although I really haven't had a whole lot of conversation with people about it, most people really don't ask me about it. But yeah, no, so now I've got my video out there. It's like if anyone wants to know what my position is, they can see that. But I really haven't had a whole lot of people come to me about it.
Yeah,
it's just kind of one of those things I just don't really see a whole lot. I hear about it, but I don't really personally see it up close a whole lot. So,
well, if I may tell you one thing, I understand your argument about, of course, that dogs are GMOs in a sense. But I don't think it's a very good argument because they will just say that it's not the same as.
No. I totally agree with that.
Of course, yes, of course.
No, yeah.
So I have a better example to counteract that argument. For example, the sweet potato, if you ever heard of it, the sweet potato, is
yes.
Has many genes from from bacteria, particularly the agrobacteria in the wild, and it is not because of humans. It's because the bacterium infects the potato naturally in the wild, and that's how it got these genes. So that is the same thing that happens in some of our GMOs. So
no, yeah. I totally agree with I was just pointing that out, but no, I definitely agree. If you're talking with someone who says, I don't like GMOs, don't respond with, well, dogs are GMOs because I totally understand that, which is why I point out we should make the distinction between GMOs and GEOs in my video, so we can say, okay, this is a direct alteration genetically. This isn't artificial selection. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's a very good example. I hadn't heard of that one, but I like it.
There are also examples of have you ever heard of grafting?
Yes.
That they take a part of one plant and then graft it onto another plant. I made one post arguing that GMOs are often called frankenfoods, and then why aren't these types of food called frankenfood? Because it's literally stitching parts of different plants into one. And I think that it's more reminiscent of the Frankenstein's monster. But I go even further and pull up some articles that show that the act of grafting makes these plants swap genes with each other.
Huh.
Yeah, they when we graft a part of a plant into another, they will swap genes. So basically, we have been genetically engineering food for thousands of years by the act of grafting, simply grafting plants onto each other.
Right. I mean, I think I would point out horizontal gene transfer.
Oh yeah.
I think would classify as a type of GEO.
Natural. I think artificial breeding is to natural selection. It's the same thing. It's like comparing horizontal gene or genetic engineering to horizontal gene transfer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Oh well, the point is we gotta get more people to accept that GMOs are not out to get us. They're not cancerous or what have you. In the same way that vaccines don't cause autism and nonsense like that.
Another powerful argument that you could make is pointing out that of basically all GMO, there is no single thing that all GMOs have in common.
Right.
For example, you can pull up two GMOs and they can have different traits due to different genes, which are introduced or altered or changed by different methods. Because genetic engineering includes many different technologies, like agrobacterium is one example, but you also have gene guns and and also a few other mechanisms that I don't remember yet. But basically, there is no single thing that all GMOs have intrinsically. There's intrinsically there. Yeah. So you cannot say, oh, this GMO is bad, therefore all GMOs are bad. That's not how it works at all.
Right.
By that simple fact alone, that argument cannot work.
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing that like anti-vaxxers. It's just if they were, or creationists also, if they were educated on this topic and really understood it, they wouldn't be having these issues. If they actually understood how these things work, then we wouldn't be, spending hours and hours trying to explain it to them. It's just like, it would be a lot easier, but unfortunately people are going to deny whatever, doesn't fit with their favored delusions. So, but that's life, I guess.
Yeah. I like the same guy who I have quoted about how scientists use these big words to keep him out of scientific fields. He also argued with me on GMOs at one occasion, and he challenged me to drink glyphosate to see how safe it really is. Because
come on.
Because I have made a post comparing its toxicity with many other chemicals. They are quite common, and I showed that glyphosate is less toxic than table salt. Yes. Do you know the LD50? Are you aware of what it is? The LD50.
I don't think so.
Oh, it's the dose that will kill half the test subjects. For example, if I have 100 mice and I give each of them the LD50 dose of a particular substance, then half of them will die, basically.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And depending on how toxic a substance is, the LD50 can be quite high or quite low. Like the more toxic, the lower it is. And salt has about 1.6 times less a lower LD50 than glyphosate. So it's almost like 1.5 times more toxic.
Wow, that's crazy.
So
did not even know that.
Yeah. So if you want to accept a challenge, drinking glyphosate to see how safe it is, you should probably drink less than how you would eat salt, basically.
Did not know that. Interesting.
Of course, salt is also quite toxic. You cannot eat a tablespoon or a tablespoon of salt. It will be quite harmful, of course. Imagine eating a tablespoon of salt.
Right. Yeah.
So of course it's not smart to eat glyphosate as well. But still, if you compare the two, it's almost not really the same, but it's almost on the same part as. So don't complain complain about how toxic glyphosate is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Also, more damning point is I also compared glyphosate to many of the organic pesticides. It's also a point that organic people always make it organic somehow means no pesticide. It's wrong.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, organic farmers use pesticides as well. And one pesticide, in fact, they use is also the same thing that's also used in BT corn. the Bt toxin that is produced by bacteria that was engineered in some GMOs is also used in organic farming. And
well, look at
that.
Yeah.
And there are other organic pesticides like many copper-based, like copper sulfate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are quite toxic, in fact, much more toxic than glyphosate. So organic farming is not a very useful alternative to glyphosate.
Well, I mean, it's already not a good financial it's not a very good financial alternative because you're in essence paying more for less product because in a lot of cases because they're not using certain pesticides or certain methods that commercial crops do, you're losing more of your crop to weevils and worms or certain parasitic worms and stuff like that. And so you have to pay more for the same amount of lettuce, except it has the organic brand on it because it went through more to get to the grocery store.
Yeah.
You have to pay more for less in essence, and so it's not feasible. It's not feasible.
Yeah.
But oh well.
Yeah. So it's also true that many plants produce their own pesticides because some plants are just naturally resistant to many insects, and that is because they produce their own toxins basically. Many organic people want to say, oh, I do GMOs only because I want to avoid as much toxins as possible, but it doesn't work like that because many plants have their own toxins, like the mustard plants that they're bitter tastes often, like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's because the taste comes from their own defense mechanisms against insects, because insects can stand these bitter tastes of these plants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you are eating a broccoli, you're basically eating many toxins. Of course, the dose makes the poison, which means that you can eat the broccoli without any severe health effects, but despite its toxins that it has, so it's just healthy for you, of course.
Right.
And the same goes for like GMO plants that have a tiny bit of glyphosate contamination. That the residue is not enough to make you sick at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or somebody in the live chat will want to say something to you about a recent paper. Not all skepticism. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've actually been paying attention to the chat a bit. I'm sorry. Recent paper on not all skepticism is equal, exploring the ideological antecedents of science acceptance and rejection. Oh no, I totally agree. Yeah, not all skepticism is equal. Yeah, interesting. I'll have to find that paper. I've actually bookmarked both of or I guess a few of the papers that we were looking at earlier, so I can read them later. Yeah, I'll look that one up. Thank you very much, Nim. I'll check that out. Oh, it's on Sage Pub also. That's funny. I like that. I think it's funny. You know what Sage Pub is?
Sage Pub? No.
Yeah, I think Sage Pub is this is a journal that basically does they're all about postmodernism.
Oh.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I've read who is it? I follow a group, or it's one account on Twitter that's several different people who contribute to it. It's called the New Real Peer Review, I think, or something like that. The Real Peer Review, I think, is what it's called. And they basically tweet out articles from Sage journals, and there'll be hilarious stuff.
Yeah.
Like time moves differently in the city and out of the city for whatever reason. It's really funny, the stuff that they put out there.
Yeah, I've seen some postmodernism too. I think there's also an art movement of postmodernism that goes against like the generally accepted art. I have no problem with it. But I've seen also many very strange ideas, like the one video about in some university class, some girl says that the Western science should be rejected and replaced by African voodoo or something. I don't know.
Yeah, King Crocodile has that clip, doesn't he?
Yes, I asked that they asked me to video about that. It was very strange.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. That kind of. I'm actually taking an English class right now where art, which focuses on postmodernism and post-structuralism. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how it goes.
Well,
yeah.
I think you shouldn't expect something of that caliber, but
No, I definitely don't think that is going to happen. But I'm interested to learn about it because it's very intriguing. It's because you're right. It's fairly recent. It's only like later 40s and 50s was when it started, and it kind of crossed into America by 60s and 70s, and so it's very interesting, I think. But that's just my opinion. So, well, let's see. Is there any more like questions you want to ask me? Because
I think we can wrap this up pretty soon because we have now. But there are some questions about maybe not real questions, but Ars SC 227 has said, why do your testes start in your abdomen and then migrate back to your nutsack? Have you heard it? You know how your balls first start out inside you and then they drop?
Yeah, that's right. As you hit puberty, right?
Yeah, it's also he also makes a very good point next. How much? The whole Nim says the holes in the abdominal wall are a good design, and I think he's referring to when your balls, when your gonads, at least in the male sex, they drop through holes in your abdomen, and that can cause a hernia. You know?
Yeah.
When part of your intestines goes through it, and it is very, and I don't. Can that actually happen? When I first saw that, how? What the hell? It is very stupid. It is very stupid design. If you ask me, like there are holes in your abdomen where your intestines can drop in and cause you to have a very bad day.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And it goes back to how I think, have you read Neil Shubin's Inner Fish?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that our gonads start inside our body goes back to fish, because fish, even the males of fish, of course, have the gonads inside them. And because we evolved from fish, we first develop our gonads also inside us, but since we are warm-blooded and sperm like to have a bit of a cool temperature, they have to be outside a bit.
Yeah, I investigated that for whales in a video I did recently. Yeah.
Yeah. They are very streamlined.
They are, in fact. So yeah.
So maybe some other questions in the.
Well, we talked a little bit about the movies.
Yeah. It's RCS says that hernias, millions of people get a hernia every year because of design, quote unquote.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say thank you for having me on today.
Yes, it's a good time because now we are on the, I think, 3 hour and 20 minute mark. So it's a good time to stop, because otherwise it would be too long for people to think, no, I'm not going to watch this because it's too long. So,
yeah.
So yes, are you going to have? Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was finished. Sorry.
Are you going to have a hangout tomorrow or soon, or maybe not?
Okay.
Are you going to have a hangout soon?
Oh, am I going to have a hangout? I hadn't even thought about it.
Well, maybe not today, of course, but maybe tomorrow.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I can. I probably can. I get out of class like fairly early in the day, so maybe. Yeah, I guess I'll have to.
Because
I
I
might be
because
able to.
I have a lot of free time this weekend and also tomorrow, so I can perhaps join if you have a hangout. But, of course, you have to decide for your own.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'll have to think of a topic. We also got to drive back, so we'll be getting back in Baton Rouge like, probably 8 or so tonight.
Mhm.
So I'll have to think about that and whatnot. But yeah, I'll
Yes.
consider that. I'll consider that. I haven't scheduled any talks recently. Actually, we were talking about Neil Shubin. He's one of the he's a person I would like to interview sometime, but he
Oh my.
has not returned any of my messages, so I think that's a no as of right now.
Oh man, it would be fantastic to have something like him. Of course, we had Peter P.G. Myers here for a few 1.5 hours. This is also pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you want to say something before we end this up?
Okay. If you didn't know, people, I have a YouTube channel where I make videos generally about evolutionary biology, but sometimes about other stuff like GMOs or medical practices or crank medical practices, I should say. So my channel is my name, Jackson Wheat. So if you want to check me out, you can go there. And yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. His videos are very awesome, especially one of his videos on mammal evolution. It got a really a lot of views.
An unusually large number of views, and yet virtually no one has commented on it. I've gotten like one person I didn't know, and he was basically just saying, "Wow, good video." Who's watching this video? Who is doing it? Because
perhaps some creationists they go, aha, I'm video on evolution. Perhaps I could dismantle it, but when they saw it from there is nothing I could refute. Sorry.
If only I were so lucky.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I mean, I honestly I have no idea who's watching. It's up to like 2,000 something views, and still barely any comments. I just don't know what it is. I don't know why no one's commenting on it, but a whole bunch of people are watching it. Savannah has suggested that maybe it's college students watching it for a class, and I thought maybe, I guess it was a very brief overview. I also talk unusually quickly in that video. It's like I was trying to channel my inner R and Raw, I guess, and just rattle it off. And everybody was like, "Jackson, you need to slow down." Afterwards, like take some breaths.
Have you followed R and Ra's videos on the systematic classification of life?
Oh yeah, they're wonderful. I've liked each one of them, so they all appear in my liked videos.
Also, sometimes I think don't end with a pun. Don't end with a bad pun, please. But it doesn't matter. He can of course end with whatever he wants. Sometimes it hits, like he has like a pun on Sina don't. Sina kinda don't. Was one of his videos about Sino don't. Yeah, so it was a pretty clever pun, I think, at least.
Yeah.
So I think we should now wrap this up. Anything more to say before we end this up?
Just again, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
And thanks for having you, and also thanks for PG Myers for his participation. And we will end this hangout. Thanks for watching, and of course subscribe to Jackson Reed. He has awesome videos. You don't want to miss it. Okay, bye everyone.